Chapter 419. Bro, you guys are here too. That's good, that's good. When little Fatty caught sight of Su Zimo and the others, his eyes lit up and he ran over hurriedly. His loose robes could not conceal his jiggling fats no matter what. The 6 of them were naturally delighted that they managed to arrive here safely without any mishaps. Feng Manman cupped her fists. Chiguramon won't be taking anything from the Elixir Refinement Hall. Let's head in and see if there are any ancient talisman books that have been preserved. Yes, Tang Yu nodded. Lung Ro bade farewell to Su Zimo and the others. There were not many cultivators from Tomb Sect and Puppet Sect that entered the valley to begin with, and now there were only a handful of them left. Little Fatty and Shi Jian left with the leaders of their respective sects to enter the ruins in search of treasures and opportunities as well. Right then, a dark figure flashed not far away. Like a phantom, it arrived beside Su Zimo silently without attracting anyone's attention. Night Spirit had returned. Night Spirit held something bloody in his mouth that resembled a meatball with a foul stench. Su Zimo glanced at it casually and did not pay much attention to it initially. However, immediately after, Su Zimo seemed to have thought of something as he turned around and his eyelids twitched. It was the Zhu Yan's head. Its neck was clearly torn apart by sharp claws and one of its eyes was blinded. Night Spirit bit down on the severed neck and brought it back just like that. Isn't that Night Spirit? Tang Yu caught a whiff of the blood stench and turned around to see Night Spirit standing beside Su Zimo with something bloody in his mouth. Yes, Su Zimo replied without saying anything else. Tang Yu frowned slightly. Suddenly, she felt that something was amiss. Night Spirit seemed to have disappeared for a period of time right after the Zhu Yan appeared. However, at that time, everyone's attention was attracted by the Zhu Yan and they were all trying their best to escape. No one noticed if Night Spirit was following them. Tang Yu couldn't remember. No matter how hard she tried to recall, the existence of Night Spirit during that period of time was a blank. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. Tang Yu asked hesitantly, "Fellow Taoist Su, has Night Spirit always been with us?" "Yeah, I've been following you." Su Zimo nodded with a calm expression. "What's that?" Tang Yu pointed at the lump of blood in Night Spirit's mouth and asked curiously. Su Zimo replied ambiguously, "I don't know either. I reckon that it bit off some random ancient remnant beast's corpse on the way here." Now Zhu Yan's face was beyond recognition. It was a bloody mess and its head was dyed red with blood. How could Tang Yu recognize it? Tang Yu asked a few more questions, but she was even more confused. After pondering for a while, he still couldn't think of a reason, so he put the matter aside for the time being. After Tang Yu left, Su Zimo turned to look at Night Spirit and asked in a low voice, "Why did you bring that head back? Why don't you finish it outside?" Ooh. Night Spirit put down the Zhu Yan's head and extended his claws, pointing at it before pointing at Su Zimo. If anyone else saw this, they would definitely not understand what Night Spirit meant. However, Su Zimo understood and asked with a frown, "You're saying that this thing is for me to eat?" Night Spirit nodded and licked his lips again. By the looks of it, he was still reluctant to part with it. Su Zimo smiled and shook his head. "Go ahead and eat it. You haven't eaten anything good all these years." Although Su Zimo had once tasted raw meat and blood in Songlang Mountain Range for the sake of his demonic cultivation, he was still a human. Su Zimo truly lost his appetite at the sight of that bloody head. When Night Spirit saw that Su Zimo was not eating, he rubbed his head against the ladder again. Thereafter, he extended a claw and gently pierced a hole in the head of the Zhu Yan. After a while, a milky white viscous liquid began to flow out of the hole. It emitted a rich fragrance that whetted one's appetite. "This is..." Su Zimo blinked and vaguely thought of something. "The Zhu Yan's brain." In the ancient books of Misty Peak, there was a sentence written at the end of the Zhu Yan chapter. An ancient mighty figure ate its brain and praised, "It's fragrant in the mouth and has an endless aftertaste." The fact that an ancient mighty figure would give such an evaluation was proof of the deliciousness of the Zhu Yan's brain. Night Spirit stuck out its tongue and licked clean the brain matter that had spilled out, revealing an intoxicated expression. A moment later, Night Spirit lifted the Zhu Yan's head and handed it to Su Zimo, indicating for him to just suck at the whole. Night Spirit was becoming more and more human-like and was clearly at the peak of Foundation Establishment realm. It could condense an inner core at any moment and transform into a human form. Su Zimo felt a warmth in his heart. However, he still shook his head and smiled. You can have it. I'm not used to eating this. Night Spirit was doubtful and tilted his head to look at Suzimo with a confused expression. He did not seem to understand how anyone could dislike such a delicacy in the world. When he saw that Suzimo was truly indifferent, Night Spirit lifted the Jueyin's head and sucked at the hole in the head. Gulp! Gulp! In a few mouthfuls the Jueyin's brain was sucked clean. After he was done, Night Spirit licked his lips as though he had not had enough. Woo! Woo! Night Spirit cried out again and swayed his tail, circling to Suzimo agilely. Suzimo focused his gaze. On the spike at the end of the tail, there was an egg-shaped object the size of a fist. It was emerald green in color and contained emerald green juice. This is the gallbladder of the hook snake? Suzimo pondered for a moment and probed. Night Spirit nodded and handed the gallbladder to Suzimo, indicating for him to eat it. If the Jueyin's brain was a rare delicacy in the world, then the gallbladder of the hook snake was a rare medicinal herb. A drop of the gallbladder of the hook snake was enough for an ordinary person to be healthy for 100 years. After a cultivator swallowed it, their poison resistance would increase tremendously, and they would be able to resist most poisons. Suzimo rubbed Night Spirit's head and said softly, Night Spirit, you can have it. I'm almost immune to all poisons now. I don't need this. Night Spirit fell silent. A moment later, Night Spirit's eyes lit up. Suddenly, he raised his head in Xiaoning's direction and cried out. Do you mean to give the gallbladder to Xiaoning? Suzimo asked. Night Spirit nodded and gestured a few times. Suzimo understood what he meant. Night Spirit was saying that he had failed to protect Xiaoning when she was poisoned previously. He caught sight of a region in the east that shone with a divine light, and many cultivators were gathering there. There's no mistake. In a flash, Suzimo vanished from the spot, east of the Elixir Pool sect ruins. Looking down from the sky, one could clearly see that there were rows of gigantic jade bottles made of rocks on the ground, resembling cave abodes. The mouth of the bottle was the entrance of the cave, and there were words written on it. Although they were already blurred, one could still make out the words. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3. It was obvious by now. A Level 1 cave abode would definitely store a Grade 1 elixir. A Level 2 cave abode would store a Grade 2 elixir. A Level 3 cave abode. There were a total of 8 jade bottle cave abodes here. In other words, there was a high chance that a Grade 8 elixir was stored in the 8th jade bottle cave abode. Even the elixir consumed by perfected being Jindan was only a Grade 3 elixir. What sort of cultivation realm was a Grade 8 elixir meant for? Of course, even if they knew that, the cultivators gathered before the 8 cave abodes could only lament their inadequacies. That was because there was a seal at the entrance of each cave. Even after so many years, the seals were still perfectly preserved. Even if it was a Grade 3 elixir, none of the cultivators in the ancient battlefield would be able to break it, let alone a Grade 8 elixir. At that moment, everyone's gazes were fixed on the cave abodes containing Grade 2 elixirs. That was because the Meridian Unlocking Elixir was a Grade 2 elixir. Everyone, no matter what, we've got to break the seal of this cave abode first. A moment later, Pei Chunyu stood out and declared, the earlier we break the seal, the earlier we can enter the cave abode and obtain the elixirs we need. The longer we delay here, the more cultivators will be able to split the elixirs later on. That's right. Let's join forces and break the seal first. I agree. As for the elixirs inside, we'll have to rely on our own capabilities after we enter the cave abode. Many cultivators agreed. Bang! 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 Under Pei Chunyu's command, many cultivators struck at the same time, summoning their flying swords and striking the seal of the Grade 2 elixir cave abode repeatedly. A series of light screens appeared at the entrance of the cave, flickering continuously and emitting a brilliant light. As time passed by, the light gradually dimmed. The seal is about to be broken. Everyone, let's work harder. Some cultivators shouted excitedly. The 2 sealers of Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect did not make a move and merely watched coldly from the sidelines. Although the sealers would not be devoured by the dimensional tears here as long as they did not release their Jindan realm powers, the 2 of them were old and their stamina was waning. They would not make a move easily. At their age, every single time they made a move, they would expend what little life essence they had left. It was like a 10-year-old in the mortal world. If they cultivated their bodies and minds, they could live for a few more years. However, if they exercised vigorously and expended their blood essence, they would die before long. Bang! 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 There was another series of explosions, and a series of cracking sounds could be heard from the entrance of the cave. After a momentary pause, the light screen shattered. The eyes of many cultivators lit up and they moved at the same time, swarming towards the entrance of the cave. This cave abode had been sealed for countless years, and yet, there was no aura within it. Instead, it was filled with a rich medicinal fragrance that invigorated one's spirits. Sprinting the entire way, it did not take long for everyone to arrive at the depths of the cave abode, and their vision cleared up. A gigantic spirit pool was placed at the end of the cave abode. Congealed jade bottles floated in the spirit pool one after another, densely packed at a single glance. Every single one of them contained elixirs. The elixirs were nourished with spirit liquid to ensure that they would not rot after 10,000 years. This was a true elixir pool. Chapter 421. Words were clearly engraved on the densely packed jade bottles. Spirit Regeneration Elixir, Mystic Young Elixir, Snow Lotus Elixir, Grand Essence Enhancing Elixir. There were all sorts of elixirs that everyone was familiar with. Some elixirs that had been lost in Tianhuang mainland floated in the elixir pool as well. In fact, there were some elixirs whose names were unheard of. However, none of that was important. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the elixir pool, searching for a single elixir. The Meridian Unlocking Elixir. There! Someone with sharp eyes caught sight of the jade bottle of the Meridian Unlocking Elixir and exclaimed, "Swash! Swash! Swash!" One after another, figures charged forward and grabbed for the Meridian Unlocking Elixir in the elixir pool. Scram! Pei Chunyu hollered softly and channeled his bloodline, causing a crystalline glass light to flow on his skin. With a backhand punch, he exploded the head of a cultivator beside him. The person did not make a sound and could not resist at all as his headless corpse fell from midair. Someone at the side took out a flying sword and stabbed it towards Pei Chunyu's head. Pei Chunyu did not dodge or avoid and reached out, grabbing the flying sword in his palm. His palm was unharmed. Pei Chunyu's spirit weapon was a pair of gloves. Furthermore, it was a perfect-grade spirit weapon, and he was not afraid of his opponent's flying sword at all. Humph! How dare you fight with me for the Meridian Unlocking Elixir with just that? Pei Chunyu sneered and exerted strength in his palm. With a snap, the superior-grade flying sword was snapped and flung in reverse. The strength of the Glass Palace cultivator was immense, and the broken sword turned into a beam of light, piercing the chest of the opposing cultivator instantly, causing fresh blood to spurt out. Another person was dead. Pei Chunyu displayed his might, and his fists were like a pair of gigantic hammers that were invincible. Although there were some itinerant cultivators at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment, they were not a match for Pei Chunyu at all. With a single punch, their tendons and bones were broken and their bodies exploded. In the blink of an eye, Pei Chunyu killed most of the cultivators around him. On the other side, Shuiyang held a bone spear that was completely covered in blood. His expression was gloomy, and he didn't hold back in the slightest. He'd already successively killed over 10 cultivators, causing blood to dye the pill pool red. The successors of the two major sects, Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect, stood at the front of Danqi and went on a killing spree. No one dared to step forward. The two of them exchanged glances. Almost at the same time, they leaped forward and reached for the Suet jade bottle with the Meridian Unlocking Elixir written on it. "You're courting death." The killing intent in Pei Chunyu's eyes intensified. He changed his attack trajectory at the last minute and grabbed Shuiyang's wrist. Even though Shuiyang was the fiend heir of Malevolent Earth Sect, his physique was far inferior to Pei Chunyu's. If Pei Chunyu caught him, Shuiyang's hand would be crippled. Left with no choice, Shuiyang retracted his hand. A dark look flashed through his eyes as he said coldly, "If I can't get it, don't even think about getting it." At the same time Shuiyang retracted his hand, a spearhead popped out from under his ribs strangely. It emitted a dense malevolent aura and shone with spirit light, piercing Pei Chunyu's palm. Even though Shuiyang's bone spear was not a perfect spirit weapon, it was naturally not to be underestimated after being tempered with malevolent aura day and night for dozens of years. The collision of the two spirit weapons, coupled with the strength of the two of them, caused a golden and black energy halo to burst forth and spread across the surface of the Dan Qi. Piak, piak, piak. There was no way the suet jade bottles floating in the Dan Qi could withstand that sort of energy fluctuation. They shattered one after another, scattering countless elixirs with a suffocating medicinal fragrance. Among the dense elixirs, there was a handful of meridian unlocking elixirs with extremely good quality. Almost all of them were supreme grade 4 vein patterns. Almost at the same time, the two of them focused their gazes on one of the meridian unlocking elixirs. Although the meridian unlocking elixir was clearly smaller, it revealed 5 dreamy elixir patterns on its surface. A perfect meridian unlocking elixir. Instantly, their gazes turned incomparably fervent and their breathing turned heavier. Given their potential, there was at least an 80% chance of them unlocking their 8th spirit meridian, after obtaining the perfect meridian unlocking elixir. Right now, apart from Pei Chunyu and Shui Yang, no one else dared to approach the Dan Qi recklessly. Pei Chunyu said slowly with a stern expression, "Shui Yang, there's only one meridian unlocking elixir. You'd better not fight with me for it." Shui Yang laughed strangely. "You think you can get me to back out with just a single sentence? Let's rely on our own capabilities. I want to see what level your glass heart sutra is at." "Alright, I'll show you then." Before his sentence was finished, Pei Chunyu strode forward and sped towards Shui Yang. Pei Chunyu's physique was strong and he specialized in melee combat. Once he closed in on Shui Yang, he would definitely lose. Naturally, Shui Yang understood that as well. With a flick of his wrist, spirit energy circulated within his body and surged wildly into his bone spear. In the blink of an eye, the bone spear broke into 11 pieces. Previously, the malevolent Earth sect cultivator Di Xing, who tried to kill Su Zimo outside Xiantian City, had 10 pieces to his bone spear. Shui Yang's bone spear was even more than his. Go. Using malevolent Earth sect's weapon control technique, Shui Yang controlled the 11 pieces of the bone spear that carried a pitch-black malevolent aura to envelop Pei Chunyu, sealing off all his paths of escape. Although Pei Chunyu was strong, he only had 2 fists. When he saw the 11 pieces of the bone spear piercing over, Pei Chunyu slapped his storage bag and withdrew a glass steel shield. Instantly, it expanded and blocked in front of him. Boom! The 11 pieces of the bone spear collided against the glass steel shield with a loud bang. This time round, both of them used their full strength. Pei Chunyu retreated and Shui Yang's 11 pieces of bone spear were repelled as well. A blank space appeared between the two of them. Swash! The moment the two of them retreated after the head-on collision, a figure charged over at lightning speed, leaving a series of afterimages in midair that seemed both real and illusory. In a flash, the figure had already arrived above the elixir pool, and scooped up the perfect meridian unlocking elixir in his palm. The crowd was in an uproar. It was too fast. Even the spectating cultivators could not react in time, let alone Pei Chunyu and Shui Yang. Furthermore, the timing of this person's appearance was way too precise. It was right when Pei Chunyu and Shui Yang were fighting head-on and had yet to recover their strength. Just like that, the two of them watched as the perfect meridian unlocking elixir was snatched away by someone else. How dare you? You must have a death wish. Pei Chunyu and Shui Yang were enraged and killing intent surged in their eyes, almost spewing out. The spectating cultivators were curious as well as they wondered who it was that dared to snatch food from the jaws of a tiger. That action was equivalent to offending 2 super sects, Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect. The cultivator who arrived after snatching the perfect meridian unlocking elixir paused for a moment and stood in midair without any support. Dressed in green robes, he had a calm expression and a pair of spirit wings on his back that flapped gently. "It's him. Su Zimo." A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. Pei Chunyu's expression darkened instantly as he put away his glass steel shield. A murderous aura gathered between his brows as he said slowly, "Su Zimo, I didn't want to bother with you in Xiantian City. Since you're courting death today, don't blame me for it." TSK TSK TSK. Shui Yang's gaze was cold as he laughed sinisterly. "There's no door to hell to begin with. You're the one who's courting death and barged in. Even Elixir Yang sect won't be able to protect you if Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth sect want to kill you." Chapter 422. Standing in midair, Su Zimo's gaze was as sharp as a knife. Lingering for a moment on Pei Chunyu and Shui Yang's faces, he suddenly reared his head in laughter and declared in a maniacal manner, "Do you think the two of you can kill me?" The cultivators in the cave abode were dumbfounded with shocked expressions. In Tianhuang mainland, Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect were publicly acknowledged supersects, and were known for their strong frontal combat strength. Although the 5 heretical doctrines and 4 unorthodox groups were similar to the 2 sects in terms of reputation and status, however, in terms of combat strength, the disciples of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects were still the strongest. Su Zimo made a name for himself with that bloody battle on the Long Street. Later on, he even destroyed Poison Sect in the ancient battlefield single-handedly, and his reputation grew even more. However, in everyone's hearts, Su Zimo was still far inferior to the disciples of super sects with strong foundations such as Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect. Immediately after, Su Zimo's next sentence caused an uproar. "Pei Chunyu, Shui Yang, the two of you have tried to kill me multiple times. Don't think of leaving today. Die." Putting away the perfect meridian unlocking elixir, Su Zimo withdrew Blood Quencher from his storage bag slowly. With a flick of his wrist, the saber shone brightly with a blood beam and buzzed. Su Zimo truly doesn't know his place. That's right. One of them is the successor of Glass Palace and the other is the fiend heir of Malevolent Earth Sect. He's just an unknown cultivator. What rights does he have to challenge those 2 great cultivators? He's a frog in a well after all. I reckon he hasn't even heard of sealers. Many cultivators shook their heads and looked at Su Zimo as though they were looking at an idiot. Typically speaking, sealers would not attack. However, if the successors of the 2 sects were in danger, they would definitely step forward. Therefore, even Pei Chunyu and Shui Yang did not dare to claim that they could kill the other party. If they were to kill them and force the sealers to attack, both sides would suffer losses and there would be no benefits for anyone. However, right now, Su Zimo declared that he was going to kill Pei Chunyu and Shui Yang in front of a sealer, causing a wave of mockery. The sealer of Glass Palace was a golden-robed old man. How interesting. A look of disdain flashed across the golden-robed elder's eyes. The sealer of Malevolent Earth Sect, a skinny old man, curled his lips into a mocking smile. Ha 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 ha. As though he had just heard the funniest joke in the world, Pei Chunyu burst into laughter. Su Zimo, to think that you still can't understand the situation at this point. Today, I'll show you what the methods of an immortal sect are like. Kiki. Shui Yang laughed sinisterly. Su Zimo, it's a worthy death for you to die in the hands of the successors of the immortal and fiend sections. What shitty immortal sects and demonic sects? None of them can compare to the saber in my hand. Su Zimo hollered and 6 spirit meridians shone beneath his robes as he channeled his spirit energy to its limits. In a flash, he charged towards Shui Yang with his saber at an extremely fast speed. Even under such circumstances, Su Zimo still dared to make the first move with a torrential aura. You must have a death wish. Although Malevolent Earth Sect had body tempering techniques using malevolent chi as well, they were still weaker compared to top body tempering sects such as Glass Palace and Overlord Palace. If Pei Chunyu had charged over, Shui Yang would definitely have retreated and widened the distance between them. However, when he saw that it was Su Zimo, Shui Yang relied on his superior cultivation realm and did not retreat or dodge. Gripping his bone spear with both hands, the malevolent spirit energy within his body burst forth and pierced towards Su Zimo, who was in midair. Pust! In Shui Yang's hands, the bone spear drew a series of arcs in an extremely agile manner. Like a venomous snake, it pierced the void and let out a series of strange sounds. Many cultivators were secretly shocked when they saw that spear technique. Notwithstanding the power of Shui Yang's spear, that spear technique alone was enough to stun everyone present. Everyone felt that it was extremely troublesome and could only retreat. Swash! At the same time, Pei Chunyu moved. He was as fast as lightning and his eyes shone with a clear glazed light. With a chilling killing intent, he leaped and lunged towards Su Zimo's back. Pei Chunyu's plan was clear. If Shui Yang were to kill Su Zimo with a single spear, Shui Yang would be in a state where he had just expended his strength and had yet to recover his strength. He would definitely reveal an opening. He would then be able to take advantage of the opening and injure Shui Yang severely. Taking a step back, even if Shuiyang failed to kill Su Zimo, he could kill Su Zimo with ease and snatch away Su Zimo's storage bag. No matter what happened, Pei Chunyu would be the biggest winner. At that moment he had yet to realize that he had missed out on another scenario. On the battlefield, there were layers of spear shadows and a malevolent aura spread. It was difficult to differentiate between the real and the fake. In midair, the spirit wings behind Su Zimo's back suddenly dissipated. Everyone was shocked when they saw that. In everyone's opinion, Su Zimo's only way out was to make use of the spirit wings behind him to escape immediately. Even so, he might not be able to escape from Pei Chunyu's pursuit. But now that Su Zimo's spirit wings had dissipated and he was falling without any support, it meant that there was no way for him to retreat and he could only choose to fight Shuiyang head-on. That single action caused a subtle change in the aura of the battlefield. Su Zimo descended from the skies with both hands wielding his saber. He was fearless like a heavenly god and had completely suppressed Shuiyang in terms of aura. When they saw that, the two spectating sealers' expressions changed slightly. Before they could think further, Su Zimo hollered countercurrent. A gigantic saber descended from the skies. Splash! The blood-red light surged, and the sound of a tidal wave surged. The two sealers' expressions changed as they exclaimed, "Saber force! Something's not right." The golden-robed old man's expression changed as though he recalled something. He murmured softly, "That saber technique seems to be calming 5 stances." The skinny old man spat out. Instantly, a piece of information from more than 10 days ago flashed through the minds of many cultivators. The Saber Mountain Spirit Sea had disappeared. After 1,000 years, another cultivator had obtained the Saber Emperor's inheritance. It was him. It was no wonder why Su Zimo disappeared for a period of time after the bloody battle on the Long Street and uprooted poison sect domineeringly upon his return. All of a sudden, there was a perfect explanation for everything. Everyone's doubts were dispelled. In the face of countercurrent, Shuiyang's spear technique was extremely crude and could not withstand a single blow. All the spear shadows dissipated instantly, revealing the true body of the bone spear. Clang! Blood Quencher struck the bone spear heavily and the blood beam surged with billions of lightning bolts, drowning and purifying the malevolent aura on the bone spear instantly. Suppression. It was an all-round suppression in terms of aura, saber technique, bloodline and strength. Shuiyang cried out in pain and the web between his thumb and index finger was torn, dripping with fresh blood. Instantly, the bone spear flew out of his hands and turned into a cold beam of light. With a poof, it pierced deep into the wall behind him and the end of the spear trembled incessantly. Crack! 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 Against the impact of that terrifying slash, the protection talisman on Shuiyang's body shattered instantly and he fell backwards, spitting out a mouthful of blood. He was severely injured with a single slash. Chapter 423. In reality, if not for the protection talisman on Shuiyang's body, Su Zimo's slash might have taken his life. Even so, not only did that slash shatter the protection talisman, Shuiyang was also sent flying with injuries. When they saw that, the cultivators in the cave abode were in an uproar. This outcome was completely out of everyone's expectations. Nobody expected that the fiend heir of malevolent Earth sect would not even be able to receive a single slash from Su Zimo. Perhaps part of the reason for that was because he had underestimated his opponent. However, the terrifying strength displayed by Su Zimo refreshed everyone's understanding of him once more. Who would have thought that the Saber Emperor's inheritance would be obtained by Su Zimo? Furthermore, he had even cultivated to the realm of force. The skinny old man who was initially watching by the sidelines had a change in expression and instinctively took half a step forward, wanting to interfere. However, right after, the skinny old man's gaze shifted. When he caught sight of the figure behind Su Zimo, he relaxed and retreated. Pei Chunyu had already arrived behind Su Zimo. The two of them were extremely close. At this distance, no cultivator of the same cultivation realm would be able to take on a Glass Palace disciple head-on without being disadvantaged. Furthermore, Su Zimo had just released countercurrent and was at his weakest state. The power of force was extremely draining for Foundation establishment cultivators, and Su Zimo could not release his saber force continuously. Therefore, to the two sealers, Pei Chunyu's timing was impeccable, and Su Zimo would either be dead or severely injured. Body like glass, clear inside and out, untainted and indestructible. Pei Chunyu's eyes were like glass as he chanted 16 words. With each rune his aura would change. Towards the end, Pei Chunyu's body seemed to be shrouded in a mysterious glow that was flawless like glass, and his aura reached its peak. Die! Pei Chunyu's black hair fluttered without wind as he arrived behind Su Zimo. With a holler, he swung his gigantic fist and smashed it down viciously towards Su Zimo's head. Pei Chunyu was wearing a pair of boxing gloves, a perfect spirit weapon. 5 streaks of spiritual light flashed with dazzling brilliance, illuminating the entire cave abode as if it were daytime. It was as though Pei Chunyu was holding a blazing sun in his palm that shone with a blinding golden light and smashed towards Su Zimo with a murderous aura. Su Zimo's gaze was distant as he stared at Shui Yang, who had already been sent flying. He seemed to be completely unaware of Pei Chunyu, who was charging at him from behind. Rumble! Suddenly, within Su Zimo's body, there was the sound of a terrifying tidal wave. It was accompanied by the sound of rolling thunder, causing one's heart to tremble. Pang pang pang. Su Zimo did not even turn his head as he channeled his bloodline. His large tendons trembled as he swung his saber in a backhand motion. The blood radiance was like a tidal wave as it landed heavily on Pei Chunyu's fist. Clang! The saber and the fist collided, causing an ear-piercing sound and sparks to fly in all directions. It was true that Su Zimo could not slash out saber attacks continuously. However, after attaining lesser mastery of the orifice clearing section, his skin, flesh, tendons, bone marrow, organs and 7 orifices formed a major cycle. Just his bloodline and physique alone was strong enough. Pei Chunyu grunted dully and staggered in retreat with a startled expression. With every step he took, the soles of his feet left a clear footprint on the ground. The confidence in Pei Chunyu's eyes dissipated and turned into shock. He truly had not expected that Su Zimo would still have the strength to force him back after severely injuring Shui Yang with a single slash. Although he was not injured and his palm was merely throbbing in pain and trembling slightly, that was enough to shock him. This meant that if Su Zimo was in his peak condition, he would definitely not be a match for Su Zimo in a head-on clash. His outcome would not be much better than Shui Yang's right now. Instantly, countless thoughts flashed through Pei Chunyu's mind. At that moment, Su Zimo made use of the rebound force from Pei Chunyu's head-on clash to speed up once more and disappear from the spot. Su Zimo's figure streaked past like a galloping horse. He was so fast that a buzzing sound could be heard in the void. In almost the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already arrived in front of Shui Yang. The situation changed instantaneously. Even the 2 sealers could not react in time, let alone the many Foundation establishment cultivators that were watching. Shui Yang was sent flying by Su Zimo's slash. When he saw that Pei Chunyu had already charged forward, he wanted to take advantage of the situation to retreat and consume an elixir before joining forces with Pei Chunyu to kill Su Zimo. However, the moment that thought crossed his mind, he heard the sounds of Su Zimo and Pei Chunyu clashing head-on. The next moment, his vision blurred and Su Zimo had already arrived before him. It was too fast. How could this be? Shui Yang was scared out of his wits and was scared out of his wits. Even if he was in his peak condition, he was definitely not a match for Su Zimo at this distance, let alone the fact that he was already injured. The moment Shui Yang opened his mouth and uttered a single word, Su Zimo's gigantic palm had already enveloped him, blocking his vision. Without his bone spear, it was too late even if he had spirit weapons in his storage bag. Shui Yang could only raise his arms instinctively, wanting to block Su Zimo temporarily and seize the opportunity to escape. Snap! Su Zimo did not give Shui Yang any chance at all. His palm landed on Shui Yang's arm and crushed it instantly. His bones pierced through his flesh, revealing bloody bone stubs in a shocking manner. Ah! Shui Yang shrieked tragically. The next moment, Shui Yang's voice came to a stop. Su Zimo closed in and grabbed Shui Yang's throat with one hand, lifting him up and using him as a shield. Shoo! Shoo! At the same time, a few bone spears arrived. When they saw that Shui Yang was already in Su Zimo's hands, they stopped their momentum hurriedly and the bone spears stopped in midair. Not far away, the skinny old man had already attacked with his bone spear, wanting to kill Su Zimo and save Shuiyang. However, he was still a step too late. At that moment, Shuiyang was in Su Zimo's hands and the skinny old man did not dare to act rashly out of fear of harming Shuiyang. Instantly, the situation was in a stalemate. Ever since the start of the battle, everyone had been holding their breaths instinctively and had already forgotten to breathe. It was only at that moment that the surrounding cultivators heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone looked at Su Zimo with a different gaze. Shuiyang was not an ordinary cultivator of malevolent earth sect. He was the fiend heir. Just like that, the fiend heir was gripped by Su Zimo by the throat. His face was purple and his eyes were bulging as his tongue stuck out slightly, unable to say a single word. Both of Shuiyang's arms drooped limply and his bones were broken. They were crippled. With his arms crippled, even if Shuiyang survived, his future accomplishments would not be great. Su Zimo, release him and we can put aside the feud between you and malevolent earth sect for now. I can also spare your life. The skinny old man said slowly with a dark expression. Oh. Su Zimo raised his brow and laughed. The skinny old man continued, as a perfected Jin Dan, I'm a man of my word. Don't worry. What if I don't release him? Su Zimo's tone was indifferent as he asked with a fake smile. The skinny old man said coldly, if you don't release him, you'll definitely die today. Is that so? Su Zimo retracted his smile and replied indifferently, I hate being threatened the most in my life. Snap. There was a crisp sound. Su Zimo crushed Shuiyang's throat and tossed the corpse on the ground casually, as though he had done something insignificant. Chapter 424. Instantly, the entire cave abode fell silent such that one could hear a pin drop. Many cultivators were horrified as they looked at the corpse lying in a pool of blood on the ground in disbelief, speechless. It was way too ruthless. The fiend heir of malevolent earth sect was killed just like that. Even though immortals and fiends had been on opposing sides since ancient times, even Pei Chunyu would not have dared to be so merciless with a sealer around. The moment the fiend heir was dead, the sealer would definitely strike. Everyone looked at Su Zimo as though they were looking at a dead man. Sealers were old men in their twilight years. However, even 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators could not withstand the power of a sealer. The Jin Dan realm and Foundation establishment realm were on completely different levels. After consuming a single Jin Dan, one's life was no longer in the hands of the heavens, and one's lifespan could be extended to 500 years. In terms of strength, it was a complete suppression. The wrath of a Jin Dan was not something a Foundation establishment cultivator could withstand. Many cultivators retreated slowly, trying their best to distance themselves from Su Zimo, afraid that they would be implicated. When they saw that, Pei Chunyu and the golden-robed old man from Glass Palace exchanged glances. Both of them could see the joy in the other's eyes. The current situation was the best for them. Glass Palace would sit back and reap the spoils later. No matter which side won, Glass Palace would be the final winner. Good, very good. The skinny old man from Malevolent Earth Sect's expression darkened completely. Glaring at Su Zimo with a murderous look, the aura within his body turned increasingly terrifying and shuddering. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze and wielded Blood Quencher, facing the skinny old man without losing out in terms of aura. He had once fought against the real perfected Jin Dan and even managed to kill the latter. At that time, Su Zimo had the help of Night Spirit and the Bloodbone Palm on his right hand. Coupled with the environment and external factors, he managed to kill a Jin Dan in his twilight years. In terms of true strength, Su Zimo was definitely not a match for perfected Jin Dan. Now it wasn't as if he had no chance of winning. This was the ancient battlefield. The moment someone released the power of the Jin Dan realm, it would cause the ancient battlefield to reject them and cause dimensional tears to appear. In other words, if a sealer were to release his Jin Dan realm strength, he would only have a single chance to attack. As long as Su Zimo could survive, the one who would die would be the sealer. Die! The skinny old man lifted his foot and gently put it down. In an instant, the earth quaked and the mountains swayed. Under the watchful gazes of countless people, a gigantic fissure suddenly opened up on the ground. It extended continuously until it reached Su Zimo's feet in an instant. Whoosh! Spirit wings appeared and Su Zimo soared into the air. His hands formed a hand seal and his middle finger and thumb interlocked, forming a hand seal that contained endless power. Devil vanquishing seal. The crack on the ground was dark and deep. Suddenly a murderous aura as black as ink gushed out, rolling and surging. It transformed into a huge palm that grabbed at Suzimo in midair. The murderous aura surged and a black mist spread, causing the weather to change. The pitch-black palm resembled a ghostly claw that reached out from hell, and could drag all living beings into it by force. Even the spectating cultivators who had retreated far away felt their hearts skip a beat when they saw that palm, let alone Suzimo who was in the center of the battlefield. That was the power of the Jindan realm. It could crush everything. Boom! At the same time, a deafening sound echoed from above the cave abode. A gigantic golden palm descended from the skies, emitting endless golden light that could not be looked at directly. The patterns on the palm could be seen clearly, and it carried with it a holy aura that prevented evil from invading. Its aura was frightening and it wanted to suppress all fiends. The spirit energy in Suzimo's dantian was already pushed to its limits, and his 6 spirit meridians surged with spirit energy. The reason why he chose the fiend suppression seal was because it contained a holy aura that could suppress evil, and was a natural counter to malevolent aura. Even so, the fiend suppression seal alone could not match the spirit art released by a Jindan realm cultivator. Boom! When the two palms collided, a deafening explosion erupted. The two colors of gold and black intertwined and collided, creating a terrifying halo of energy that caused the entire cave abode to shake. Right in front of everyone, the golden palm paused for a brief moment before dissipating. As for the malevolent aura surrounding the black palm, it was clear that it had dimmed. Many cultivators were secretly shocked when they saw that. If the two of them were of the same cultivation realm, the divine power contained in the golden palm might have been able to suppress the skinny old man's spirit art completely. Clang! 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 After the two palms collided, the sharp sound of swords buzzing could be heard. 18 supreme-grade flying swords hovered in front of Suzimo at the same time and shone brightly with spirit light. The 18 flying swords crisscrossed in midair, leaving streaks of sword scars as they formed a sword formation that was sharp and exuded an endless sword chi. Candlelight sword formation. Go! A gigantic sword-shaped disc was formed, buzzing and trembling as it charged towards the remaining gigantic black palm. The black palm opened up completely and grabbed the candlelight sword formation, as though it wanted to blot out the skies. Poof! 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 Initially, the sword-shaped disc was still spinning continuously. However, after it was grabbed by the black palm, it came to a stop and let out a tragic cry. Boom! The sword formation dissipated and the 18 flying swords scattered in all directions. The malevolent aura of the black palm dimmed even more. Although the candlelight sword formation had dissipated, its terrifying power had already riddled the black palm with holes. The fiend suppression seal and candlelight sword formation consumed a lot of spirit energy, and were Suzimo's trump cards as well. But now that Suzimo had used both of his trump cards, the residual power of the sealer's spirit art was still present and was still terrifying enough to destroy all living beings. Swoosh! The black palm descended instantly and enveloped Suzimo, clenching and tightening its fist. Suzimo's figure was gripped in the palm of the black palm and a malevolent aura spread, engulfing him instantly. It was over. Although it was blocked by the fiend suppression seal and candlelight sword formation, this was the power of the Jindan realm after all. Even if Suzimo's body could withstand the grip of the black palm, the malevolent aura of the Jindan realm was enough to corrode his bloodline and kill him on the spot. On the other side, a tear appeared in the void behind the skinny old man and dragged him in with a shuddering aura. A dimensional tear. At the end of the day, the rules of the ancient battlefield were not to be violated. The skinny old man did not have a second chance to attack at all. Before the dimensional tear closed, the skinny old man's body was already torn into pieces and a blood mist spewed out into the void. There was nothing left of his corpse. A moment later, the dimensional tear closed slowly. Many people had conflicted expressions when they saw that. If not for the fact that he was targeted by the sealer, a cultivator as such would have been able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the young paragons of the major factions. He only has himself to blame. Who asked him to be so arrogant and reckless? He's definitely a genius that's hard to come by in 10,000 years to obtain the inheritance of the Saber Emperor. What a pity, sigh. There's nothing to pity. A fallen genius is no longer a genius and will eventually be forgotten by others. Exchanging a life for a life with the sealer is a worthy death for him. Some people looked regretful, some gloated and some shook their heads and sighed. Chapter 425. With a smile, Pei Chunyu was already prepared to make his move. The moment the black palm dissipated, he would rush forward to snatch Su Zimo's storage bag. But at this moment, the sound of surging waves suddenly came from the black palm in midair. It rumbled, was mighty, and had a terrifying momentum. Crack! 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 A thin crack appeared on the surface of the black palm, growing larger and clearer by the second. Swoosh! Through the pitch-black malevolent chi, a blood beam that flashed with lightning burst forth in a bedazzling manner. It split the black palm into two and a figure leaped out. Pust! When they saw that figure, everyone shuddered and their pupils constricted in disbelief. How is that possible? Pei Chunyu lost his composure and exclaimed. This figure was none other than Su Zimo, who had already fallen in everyone's hearts. Although his green robes were already corroded beyond recognition by the malevolent chi, although he looked wretched and his footsteps were light as he stumbled, his eyes were still clear. However, his eyes were still clear and bright. The battle intent emitted from his eyes did not decrease but instead increased. His entire body emitted a domineering aura that looked down on everyone. He was still alive. Against the full-powered attack of a sealer and the suppression of the Jin Dan realm, Su Zimo was still alive. This meant that a sealer had died for nothing. Malevolent Earth-sex forces in the ancient battlefield were almost completely wiped out. In reality, Su Zimo had already given his all to be able to withstand the attack of the sealer. Apart from the Fiend Suppression Seal and Candlelight Sword formation, Su Zimo had even channeled his bloodline and channeled his strength to its limits, releasing countercurrent at the final moment when he was enveloped by the black palm. Although the saber had split the black palm in half and allowed him to escape, he was still injured. Furthermore, the malevolent chi of the Jin Dan realm that the skinny old man cultivated had already surged into his body wildly. Under normal circumstances, the malevolent chi of the Jin Dan realm was enough to destroy the heart meridians of any Foundation establishment cultivator and end their life. Unfortunately, Su Zimo's bloodline contained the violent power of thunder to begin with. It was the nemesis of malevolent auras and similar powers. Furthermore, even though Su Zimo did not dare to release his demonic chi and expose the fact that he was a demonic cultivator, Su Zimo did not dare to do so. However, his body contained a vast amount of demonic chi after all. Although he couldn't release it, the invasion of baleful aura immediately triggered a powerful backlash from the demonic aura. Moreover, Su Zimo's body was nourished by the essence of the dragons. Now his physique had reached a terrifying and unfathomable level. The malevolent aura of the Jin Dan realm entered his body and was washed away by the power of thunder and lightning, the power of blood and chi, and the essence of the dragons. Before it could unleash the true power of the malevolent aura, it had already dissipated. Puff! Su Zimo spat out a mouthful of blood, his face paling slightly. Although he had survived, he was not in a good state. His body had suffered a strong impact, and his internal organs had been shaken. He had already suffered internal injuries. If the two sealers were to join forces, he would most likely be doomed. Unfortunately, there was no reason for the Glass Palace sealer to sacrifice himself to attack Su Zimo. Su Zimo leaned against Bloodquencher and panted slightly. Pei Chunyu narrowed his eyes and waited for an opportunity to strike. There were still a few malevolent earth sect cultivators left in the cave abode. Moving with venomous gazes, they had already surrounded Su Zimo. Su Zimo rested with his eyes closed, as though he was oblivious to everything that was happening around him. None of them noticed that Su Zimo's injuries were healing at a visible speed. Not only was Su Zimo's physique strong, his regeneration capabilities were even more frightening. Su Zimo, you don't even have the strength to attack? Fufu, if I were you and survived the hands of a sealer, I would have escaped from this place immediately. However, there's only a single reason why you're still here. You don't even have the strength to escape. Pei Chunyu was wary and did not dare to attack directly. He continued probing with a face full of smiles, pretending to be relaxed. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged and he did not even open his eyes, as though he did not hear anything. Seems like I was right. Pei Chunyu retracted his smile and said coldly, "Kill him." The moment he said that, the remaining Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth sect cultivators around him hollered and attacked one after another. Instantly, the cave abode shone brightly with spirit light. All of a sudden, 2 divine lights shone in the voids, even more dazzling and resplendent than the spirit lights of many spirit weapons. Those were Su Zimo's eyes. They shone brightly and were as sharp as sabers. Swash! Su Zimo's figure vanished from the spot. His saber flashed and sliced gently across the neck of one of the cultivators, causing blood to spray out. A cultivator died on the spot. Immediately after, Su Zimo slashed with a backhand slash on the arm guard of another Glass Palace cultivator. Snap! Even with the arm guard, it could not protect that person's arm. Against the crushing force, that person was sent flying and slammed heavily against the walls of the cave abode. He slid down slowly and his eyes dimmed gradually. Su Zimo charged left and right, channeling his bloodline and releasing the saber technique of the sea calming 5 stances. Nobody could stop his massacre. Pei Chunyu. Su Zimo broke through the obstacles and arrived before Pei Chunyu. Laughing loudly, he declared, "The reason why I'm staying here isn't because I don't have the strength to escape. It's because I want to take your life." Swoosh! Blood Quencher descended from the skies with a terrifying aura. Even though Su Zimo could no longer release force in his current state, he could still sweep through everything with the power of his physique and bloodline. Clang! Blood Quencher collided with Pei Chunyu's fists. That slash was the vortex of the sea calming 5 stances that Su Zimo released. Although it seemed ordinary, the saber technique contained a corkscrew and twisting power. Ah! Pei Chunyu retreated continuously and cried out in pain as a thin layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. Although he was protected by the perfect grade glove, the corkscrew and twisting power was transmitted to Pei Chunyu's arms and his sleeves exploded. Poof! Poof! Right in front of everyone, the muscles on Pei Chunyu's arms tore apart and a mist of blood burst forth. That was only the tear of his muscles. If Su Zimo was in his peak condition, that slash could have crushed the bones in Pei Chunyu's arms. "Let's go." Right then, the golden-robed old man strode forward and pulled Pei Chunyu back, tossing him towards the entrance of the cave abode and hollering. Even the sealers had thoughts of retreating. That lad is way too strong. He's truly a peerless top genius. His fortune is heaven-defying and he obtained the inheritance of the Saber Emperor. He has already accumulated enough strength and unless it's the most outstanding paragons of Tianhuang mainland, no one is a match for him. Get away from this place, the further the better. Hide in a corner of the ancient battlefield and cultivate until the time limit is up before heading out. Geniuses like him are envied by the heavens, and will definitely face a life and death calamity. It's extremely easy for him to die. Don't fight him head-on. The golden-robed old man instructed as he followed behind Pei Chunyu, and sprinted towards the entrance of the cave. The golden-robed old man did not want to release the power of the Jin Dan realm until the final moment. Furthermore, the moment he released the power of the Jin Dan realm, he would definitely die. However, Su Zimo might not die, trying to escape? Su Zimo sneered and wielded Blood Quencher. He released Divine Steed Fleeting and chased after the two of them. Chapter 426. Pei Chunyu swallowed an elixir to suppress his injuries for the time being. The calmness in his eyes had long vanished and was replaced with a panicked expression as he sped outside, not daring to stop for a single moment. This battle had thoroughly beaten him into a state of fear. At that moment, Pei Chunyu's mind was filled with the scene of Shuiyang, and the skinny old man's deaths as his limbs turned cold. This is a ruthless man who has no reservations. I must not fall into his hands. Pei Chunyu gritted his teeth and screamed in his heart. Everyone was shocked when they saw that. If they had not witnessed it personally, no one would have imagined that a Foundation establishment cultivator would hunt down the successor of Glass Palace and the sealer in the ancient battlefield. That man is truly audacious. Right now, the sealer merely doesn't want to exchange lives with him. If he's truly forced into a corner, the sealer will attack with all his might and kill him in return. That's hard to say. Didn't the sealer of malevolent Earth sect die for nothing? Many cultivators discussed and started fighting for the Grade 2 elixir of Elixir Pool sect. Thereafter, they sped out of the cave abode, wanting to see the final outcome. In front of the Elixir Refinement Hall, Su Xiaoning's eyes were still closed as she received the inheritance of Elixir Pool sect. The longer the inheritance, the more things Elixir Pool sect would leave behind. Be it for Su Xiaoning or Elixir Yang sect, it would be beneficial. Hundreds of Elixir Yang sect disciples protected Xiaoning in the middle like stars surrounding the moon. Layer by layer, they were impenetrable. Afraid that the inheritance would be interrupted, Tang Yu frowned the entire time with a worried expression as she looked into the depths of the ruins from time to time. Uncle Liang smiled gently and asked, "You're worried about young Master Su, right?" "Right now, I'm praying that there's no perfect meridian unlocking elixir in Elixir Pool sect." Tang Yu sighed. Given his character, he'll definitely fight for the perfect meridian unlocking elixir. If he says that he's bent on obtaining it, he has no chance of winning against the successors of Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth sect. "Don't worry," Uncle Liang said in a deep voice. "Now that I think about it, the saber technique that lad used should be the sea calming 5 stances. In other words, the rumors are true and he has already obtained the Saber Emperor's inheritance." Even though Tang Yu had already vaguely guessed it, hearing Uncle Liang say it now, her heart was still shaken. The Saber Mountain Spirit Sea was formed during the ancient era and countless geniuses had been buried here throughout the ages. And now, it was in the hands of an unknown cultivator. In fact, this person had never even heard of the existence of the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea. All of this seemed to be slightly absurd, yet it was also filled with indescribable profundity, as if it had been predestined long ago. Uncle Liang continued, "With that lad's current combat strength, he's definitely on par with Pei Chunyu and Shui Yang. Even if he can't defeat them, he should be able to escape unscathed. You don't have to worry." "Yes." Tang Yu nodded as the worry in her heart dissipated. At this moment, the sound of clothes fluttering in the air could be heard not far away. The speed was extremely fast. The newcomer's breathing was extremely heavy. It was obvious that he had already exhausted all his strength. The Elixir Yang sex people looked towards the source of the voice. When they saw the person's appearance, they couldn't help but be stunned on the spot. Glass Palace Pei Chunyu. Pei Chunyu looked wretched and his arms were stained with blood. His flesh was torn and was still bleeding. His face was pale and his eyes were bloodshot, no longer as clear as before. Pei Chunyu glanced at Elixir Yang sect and dashed out of Fog Valley without stopping in his tracks. Before long, his figure disappeared from everyone's sights. Forget about the other cultivators, even the intelligent Tang Yu was a little confused. She couldn't figure out what was going on. How could this be? Didn't Glass Palace head into the depths of the ruin to search for the perfect meridian unlocking elixir? Why was Pei Chunyu the only one left? Where were the sealers around him? In other words, which faction could force Glass Palace to such a state? Uncle Liang's gaze flickered as he guessed. The perfect meridian unlocking elixir must have appeared in Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth sect fought. The situation spiraled out of control and the sealers fought. Both of them died and Pei Chunyu lost to Shui Yang, forcing him to withdraw from the fight. Many Elixir Yang sect cultivators nodded silently. Tang Yu frowned. Although Uncle Liang's conjecture did not sound wrong, she felt that something was amiss. When Pei Chunyu escaped, he had a horrified expression. It was clear that he had encountered something that terrified him. Did Shui Yang have the strength to do so? Or could it be that something unimaginable had happened in the depths of the ruin? Suddenly, the sound of a head-on clash could be heard in midair far away. The sound was frightening and it was clear that the battle had reached its climax. Everyone from Elixir Yang sect looked over and opened their mouths instinctively, their expressions frozen. Far away, 2 figures were engaged in an intense fight. Spirit light shone brightly and blood filled the skies. Bang! 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 Each time the 2 of them clashed, there would be a terrifying shockwave that was shuddering. One of them was the sealer of Glass Palace, the golden-robed old man. The other person wore green robes and wielded a blood-colored saber. It was Su Zimo who had entered the ruin. This Uncle Yang was completely dumbfounded. Tang Yu's mouth was slightly agape as she stared at the green figure in the distance without blinking. All the doubts in her heart seemed to have been explained. Just now, Pei Chunyu, who had escaped, was not afraid of Shui Yang, but Su Zimo. The situation on the battlefield was extremely tense. As the sealer, the golden-robed old man did not release the power of a Jin Dan. However, each time he attacked, it was at the level of an 8-meridian foundation establishment cultivator and was unstoppable. On the other hand, Su Zimo was even more ferocious. His gaze was like a torch and his saber was sharp. Coupled with the heavy blade of Blood Quencher and the Sea Calming 5 stances, Su Zimo was actually not disadvantaged in the clash against the golden-robed old man. As time passed by, Su Zimo's bloodline surged and the sound of tsunami waves could be heard endlessly. It was clear that he was getting braver as the battle progressed. As for the golden-robed old man, his footsteps were no longer as agile as before and the blood chi that surged through his body gradually dissipated as well. This battle had taken a huge toll on him. In a short span of dozens of breaths, the golden-robed old man's skin had already lost its luster and was drying with wrinkles appearing on it. Tang Yu said in a deep voice, "The Glass Palace Sealer is already in his twilight years. His stamina is weak and his blood chi is waning. If this continues, he'll definitely lose." "He won't," Uncle Liang said with a grim expression. "Right now, the one we have to worry about is Su Zimo. The true strength of a sealer lies in his killing blow with the power of a Jin Dan. If Su Zimo stops now, he might still be able to make it. However, if he truly forces the sealer to a dead end, he'll definitely die." Given the circumstances, nobody dared to interfere at all. Nobody knew when the sealer would disregard his life and release the power of a Jin Dan. His saber did not stop as he spoke once more. "Actually, you had a chance to kill me." The golden-robed old man was unmoved. With a calm expression, he continued to defend against Blood Quencher's ripple stance. He knew that Su Zimo was attacking his mental state. Before or during a fight between top experts, they would often use words to provoke their opponents so that they would reveal openings so that they could gain the upper hand. Su Zimo smiled gently. "Your only chance was to join forces with the Sealers of Malevolent Earth Sect. If 2 sealers were to unleash their Jin Dan realm cultivation and attack me with their full strength, I wouldn't have been able to escape death. Unfortunately." The golden-robed old man's gaze flickered and an imperceptible ripple appeared in his mind. Even though he knew that Su Zimo was attacking his mental state to cause him to reveal openings, the golden-robed old man could still sense an intense indignation and rage. These words were exactly what he wanted to hear. A smile flashed through the depths of Su Zimo's eyes as he continued. "It's a pity that you're too afraid of death. Even now you're still harboring hope that you can survive. However, you know in your heart that you're definitely going to die today." "You!" The golden-robed old man's expression changed and he opened his mouth to speak. However, his movements slowed down and he revealed a huge opening. Su Zimo's eyes lit up as he strode forward. With a backhand slash, he sliced towards the golden-robed old man's throat with a chilling killing intent. All of a sudden, an extremely terrifying aura burst forth from the golden-robed old man's body. "Su Zimo, you've been tricked." Ignoring the incoming slash, the golden-robed old man suddenly burst forth with the power of the Jin Dan realm and attacked brazenly. His gigantic palm enveloped Su Zimo as he said coldly, "Even if I die, I'm going to kill you." Not good. When he saw that, Uncle Liang's heart skipped a beat and he was shocked. Others might not be able to see the situation clearly. However, given his experience, he could see everything clearly. First, when Su Zimo saw that he could not take down the golden-robed old man after attacking for a long time, he began attacking the golden-robed old man's mental state verbally in an attempt to break the stalemate. Initially, the golden-robed old man was unmoved. However, after a few sentences, the golden-robed old man was enraged and revealed a fatal opening. Naturally, Su Zimo would not let that opportunity slip by as he seized the opportunity to charge forward. However, in reality, the golden-robed old man had intentionally exposed that opening. That was the reason why he said, "Su Zimo, you've been tricked." The golden-robed old man was waiting for Su Zimo to charge forward and have nowhere to retreat before releasing the power of the Jin Dan realm to kill the latter. Heis. Uncle Liang sighed internally and shook his head. He's still too young at the end of the day. Before his sigh was finished, a chuckle sounded from the battlefield. Fufu, the one who was tricked is you. That was Su Zimo's chuckle. Initially, he was still on the battlefield. However, by the time he said that, Su Zimo had already left the spot and sprinted far away. Boom! The golden-robed old man's palm slammed heavily on the ground, leaving a clear handprint. He missed. This change stunned all the cultivators on the spot once more. Standing far away, Su Zimo looked at the golden-robed old man with a fake smile and a mocking gaze. Instantly, the golden-robed old man looked much older. A gigantic dimensional tear had already appeared behind him, devouring him mercilessly like the gaping mouth of an evil spirit from hell. After pondering for a moment, Uncle Liang was enlightened. Initially, he thought that Su Zimo would fall for the golden-robed old man's trick. However, the truth was that Su Zimo had also seen through the golden-robed old man's intentions and pretended to charge forward, luring the latter to release the power of the Jin Dan realm while he fled far away. This was a psychological game where one could not see the swords and sabers. A single misstep in the entire game would be lost and one would die. Both parties schemed and played against one another several times. Eventually, Su Zimo won and lured the sealer to his death. Chapter 428. Uncle Liang had a conflicted expression. Although the golden-robed old man did not die in Su Zimo's hands directly, the latter was the reason why he was devoured by the dimensional tear and died. The fact that the sealer did not manage to kill a Foundation establishment cultivator despite sacrificing his life was something that could not help but lament. In reality, Su Zimo took a huge risk in this battle as well. Once the sealer released his Jin Dan realm strength, Su Zimo would not be a match for him at all. In the Grade 2 Elixir Cave abode, he had to use all his trump cards to barely defend against the skinny old man's attack. However, he was still severely injured. Given Su Zimo's current condition, there was no way he could withstand another blow from the power of Jin Dan realm. That was the reason why he fought with the golden-robed old man till now. Eventually, he made use of his spirit perception to detect the golden-robed old man's killing intent and avoided it before luring the latter to his death. Su Zimo did not have much stamina left as well. If not for his immense regeneration capabilities, he would not have been able to hold on. After luring the sealer to his death, Su Zimo finally heaved a sigh of relief. After pausing for a moment, a cold glint flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he arrived before the Elixir Refinement Hall and asked softly, "Has anyone seen Pei Chunyu?" He escaped towards the entrance of the valley. A cultivator pointed. For Su Zimo, Pei Chunyu's survival was still an unknown threat. Tang Yu had a nervous expression as she hurried forward and persuaded, "Fellow Taoist Su, you're so weak right now. Don't take the risk. Furthermore, you might not be able to catch up even if you chase after him now." Su Zimo shook his head and did not explain. In a flash, he charged into the misty valley. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo's figure had already vanished from everyone's sight. Xiaoning was still receiving the inheritance. Many cultivators of Elixir Yang sect discussed the battle just now in hushed tones with excited expressions. Although the sealer was in his twilight years and only had a single chance to attack, he was still a perfected Jin Dan no matter what. This was a battle between a Foundation establishment cultivator and a perfected Jin Dan. Such a topic was enough for the people of Danyang sect to brag about for many years after they returned to the sect. Not long after, the Chiguramon cultivators returned from the depths of the ruins. Everyone's eyes were filled with joy. "Sister Manman, congratulations." Tang Yu smiled and said, "Looks like Chiguramon also gained a lot in the Elixir Pool sect." "Yes, I obtained a few lost talisman techniques." Feng Manman pursed his lips and smiled. At this moment, the discussion of some cultivators could be heard not far away. "Where did this Su Zimo come from? He's too ruthless." "That's right. I saw it with my own eyes. The fiend heir of the malevolent Earth sect was killed by him like an ant." "What's the big deal about the fiend's son? The sealer from the malevolent Earth sect died for nothing." Hearing this, many of the Elixir Yang sect members were shocked. Tang Yu frowned and turned to Feng Manman asking, "What's up with malevolent Earth sect?" Is it related to you as well, fellow Taoist Su? You still don't know? Feng Manman was surprised. Tang Yu and the others had been by Xiaoning's side the entire time, and did not know what happened in the Grade 2 elixir cave abode. Feng Manman explained, a perfect meridian unlocking elixir was born in a cave abode deep in the ruins. Su Zimo snatched it away and killed Shuiyang on the spot. Ah! A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. Feng Manman continued later on, the sealer of Malevolent Earth Sect made a move and Su Zimo withstood it. Malevolent Earth Sect was completely annihilated. This time round the elixir refinement hall was silent. In that case 2 sealers had died for nothing. Tang Yu's mouth was slightly agape with a shocked expression, and she could not recover for a long time. In the fog valley, Su Zimo spread his spirit wings and sped towards the entrance of the valley at lightning speed. He was already at his limits. He did not exchange blows with the golden-robed old man for long. Pei Chunyu was already injured and did not have much stamina left. It was not realistic for him to escape through the fog valley within this period of time. After all, the valley was filled with countless birds and beasts. Along the way, Su Zimo made use of his powerful hearing, vision and 5 senses to search for traces of Pei Chunyu. Right now it was late at night and the fog was thick. For other cultivators, their vision range was only 30 feet at most and it was extremely difficult for them to search for a single person in the valley. However, Su Zimo was different. His 7 orifices were cleared and his 5 senses were extremely sharp. His search range was extremely wide. Even the slightest movement would attract his attention. Now that the pure-blooded ferocious beasts in the valley were dead, Su Zimo rampaged through the valley fearlessly. The many demon beasts and ancient remnant beasts in the night fog did not dare to approach him and avoided him. Before long, Su Zimo charged out of the fog valley and stood at the entrance, frowning slightly. Pei Chunyu was nowhere to be seen. He had vanished. Su Zimo's gaze flickered as he fell into deep thought. There were only 2 possibilities for such a situation. First, Pei Chunyu had already escaped from the valley. However, he deduced that the possibility was not high. Second, Pei Chunyu was still in the valley. It was definitely not an easy task to hide in this foggy valley. The skies were filled with birds and beasts. There was no way a cultivator would be able to hide peacefully here. A battle would definitely break out and cause quite a commotion. However, Su Zimo did not discover any traces along the way, nor did he hear anything. Strange, Su Zimo murmured softly. Could he have truly escaped? On second thought, Su Zimo realized that as a disciple of one of the immortal sects, Glass Palace, it was not strange for him to have some means of survival. At that moment, Pei Chunyu might have truly left this place and escaped thousands of miles away. After loitering at the entrance for a long time, Su Zimo returned the way he came and gradually disappeared into the depths of the fog. A long time later, the valley regained its peace. In the blink of an eye, the night passed. The morning sun rose, dispelling the darkness in the valley. An ancient remnant beast, cloud-seeking leopard, walked out of its cave slowly with a dispirited and terrible expression. Last night it devoured a human. However, for some reason, it did not manage to digest much after the night, and its stomach felt extremely uncomfortable. After taking a few steps, the cloud-seeking leopard cried out in pain and fell to the ground weakly with a churning pain in its stomach. Shing! A flash of blood appeared. The abdomen of the cloud-seeking leopard was torn apart from the inside out by a sharp weapon, creating a huge gash. Countless organs flowed out with a blood-colored figure in the middle. The blood-colored figure bent over and retched. A moment later, the figure reached out and wiped away the blood on its face, revealing a completely disfigured face that was horrifying like a malevolent ghost. Su Zimo, I'll make you pay 100 times for the humiliation I suffered today. The blood-colored figure had a venomous gaze as it snarled. Last night, Pei Chunyu expected that he would not be able to escape from Su Zimo, and took the risk to look for an ancient remnant beast to be devoured. It was an extremely dangerous move. The squirming of a demon beast's stomach was extremely powerful and ordinary cultivators would not be able to withstand it. If it was anyone else, they would have been squished into meat paste long ago. Furthermore, the gastric juices of ancient remnant beasts were extremely corrosive, and could even corrode rocks and iron ores. If not for the fact that the glass heart sutra tempered his body, Pei Chunyu would not have been able to survive the night and would have died long ago. Even so, his body was corroded into a bloody mess and almost shed a layer of skin. He was completely disfigured and no one could recognize his original appearance. Turning back to look at the cloud-seeking leopard that was gradually losing its life, Pei Chunyu had a cold expression and staggered towards the entrance of the valley. Suzyang is? The aura emanating from the center of the cloud vortex was way too frightening and shuddering. When that might enveloped him, Su Zimo even felt an incomparable sense of inferiority in his heart, and almost wanted to prostrate in worship. Some cultivators could not withstand it, and had already knelt on the ground with horrified expressions. Gradually a gigantic squarish stone slab appeared in the center of the vortex, covering the entire area. Descending like that, it seemed as though it could crush everything in the ancient battlefield into nothingness. This was only the tip of the iceberg for this terrifying existence of unknown origins. The stone slab continued descending and gradually revealed its entire appearance. It was an ancient palace with a round ceiling and a square floor. It was filled with an ancient aura, as though it came from the ancient era. Square heavens and square earth, human emperor's palace. Uncle Liang sucked in a breath of cold air and exclaimed. At the same time, the successors of the various sects in the ancient battlefield recognized the origin of the ancient palace as well. Human emperor's palace. Those three words seemed to possess a unique charm that caused Su Zimo's blood to boil vaguely. Su Zimo had never heard of the human emperor's palace. However, when he saw the gazes of everyone else, he knew that the origin of this palace was far beyond the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea. Countless cultivators knelt on the ground and gazed at the ancient palace beneath the firmaments with endless fanaticism and reverence in their eyes. The human emperor's palace stood beneath the firmaments and hovered in the sea of thunder, looking down on the world with a boundless might like a supreme divine being. The appearance of the human emperor's palace was shocking. Uncle Liang took a deep breath of air and murmured to himself, "The appearance of the human emperor's palace means that war is about to break out in Tianhuang mainland and a golden era is about to arrive. Seems like a supreme emperor is bound to be born in this era. Perhaps we're about to welcome a golden era where multiple emperors rise and the glory of the ancient era is reborn. I'm fortunate enough to be born in this era and witness everything. I can die without regrets now." South of the ancient battlefield, a cultivator with a buzz cut was topless. Every single inch of his muscles shone with a bronze glow and was filled with explosive power. That person broke out of seclusion and carried a gigantic spear on his shoulder. Exuding a violent aura, he looked up at the ancient palace above his head and roared in laughter. "Ha ha ha ha. The human emperor's palace has descended. Seems like Peng Yu, will definitely be conferred the title of emperor in this era." Before his laughter ended, Peng Yu strode towards the center of the ancient battlefield. North, at the entrance of a hidden cave abode, a pair of resentful eyes could be vaguely seen through the layers of vines. Su Zimo, if not for you, Pei Chunyu, would definitely have a chance to obtain the inheritance of the human emperor's palace. Half a year had passed and Pei Chunyu had yet to break through to 8 Meridian Foundation establishment, and was unable to participate in the fight for the inheritance of the human emperor's palace. In order to survive, he could only continue hiding here. West. A monk who was initially sitting quietly in the desert suddenly stood up and looked up at the ancient palace above his head, murmuring to himself, "Human emperor's palace. I'm tempted." East. A purple cloud surged into the skies and descended slowly, conjuring a figure. The purple-robed cultivator was stern and solemn. He exuded a dignified aura without anger, and was shrouded by an endless purple chi with an extraordinary aura. After pondering for a moment, the purple-robed cultivator disappeared from the spot in a flash. At the center of the ancient battlefield, before a waterfall, a cultivator sat quietly on a green rock. Although he was drenched by the water droplets, he did not care at all. A sheathed sword rested horizontally on his knees and his eyes were long and narrow, shimmering with a sharp glint. "Huh." The cultivator gripped the hilt of his sword slowly with slender jade-like fingers. Buzz! A sword beam flashed and disappeared. The sword had already returned to its sheath, as though it had never appeared. Suddenly, the waterfall that was initially gushing down paused for a moment and a long white mark appeared in the middle, as though it was severed by someone. Who else can obtain the inheritance of the human emperor but me? Rising, the cultivator casually hung the sword by his waist and murmured, "It's rare for me to have a chance to test the capabilities of the successors of the various sects with my startling sword." Almost at the same time, the successors of the various major sects moved and headed towards the center of the ancient battlefield. End of chapter. Chapter 430. Xintian City. Su Zimo arrived beside Tang Yu and asked softly, "What's the background of the human emperor's palace?" Tang Yu looked at Uncle Liang. "Uncle Liang, you should tell me. I don't know as much as you do about these ancient secrets. It's a pity that my lifespan is almost up and I won't be able to witness the glorious era that's about to descend." Sigh. Uncle Liang sighed with a lamenting expression, his eyes filled with endless indignance. After pausing for a moment, Uncle Liang said slowly, "Speaking of the human emperor's palace, there's a person that has to be mentioned, the human emperor." The moment he said that, the entire ancient battlefield seemed to tremble as though it contained a divinity. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. Just by hearing his name, one could easily tell that he was a ruler. However, Tang Yu did not reveal such an expression when she mentioned the saber and sword emperors back then. It was a heartfelt admiration and respect. This was no longer a simple title. It was more like an eternal power that existed through time. As though he could sense the confusion in Su Zimo's heart, Uncle Liang explained, "Throughout history, emperors have appeared in every generation. The Saber Emperor who left behind the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea was only the Saber Emperor of that generation. In the later generations, there were people who attained the title of the Saber Emperor as well. In other words, be it the Saber, Sword, Immortal or Demon Emperors, there aren't only one of them. There will be peerless paragons who will be conferred the title of Emperor in every generation." At that point, Uncle Liang paused for a moment before continuing in a deep voice, "However, throughout history, there has only been a single person with the title of the human emperor. The other sovereigns were only titles, but he was the only human sovereign. He was the human emperor." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. When he heard that, he gradually understood the weight of the title of the human emperor. Even the immortal Buddhist and fiend emperors could not compare to the title of the human emperor. The immortal Buddhist and fiend Daos were merely three different Daos of the human race. However, the human emperor was the emperor of the human race and was above the immortal Buddhist and fiend emperors. What sort of a peerless paragon was worthy of the title of the human emperor? With a reminiscing expression, Uncle Liang said slowly, "The human emperor was the strongest and strongest emperor in history. There was no one else like him. In front of the human sovereign, all the other sovereigns have to bow their heads. The human emperor has never been defeated in his life. He has dominated Tianhuang for countless years and reached the peak. He swept through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, and no one dared to go against him. He looked down on the world and was feared since ancient times." Su Zimo's heart surged as he listened, unable to control himself. Never being defeated in one's life, this was a true emperor. The best of all ages. There had been no mortal emperor before him, and no one dared to call themselves the mortal emperor after him. Uncle Liang exhaled lightly and continued, "Of course, the reason the mortal emperor is called the mortal emperor is not only because of his combat strength, but also because of his immortal achievements. It's no exaggeration to say that the human emperor is the reason why the human race can occupy more than half of Tianhuang mainland today. Do you know why the human race was born weak? How did they achieve their current glory?" Uncle Liang suddenly paused and changed the topic. "No idea." Su Zimo shook his head. In fact, he had thought about this problem before. Humans were born weak with frail constitutions and short lifespans. Without claws and fangs, even an adult human could not kill a ferocious tiger bare-handed. There was even less of a need to compare them to the legendary dragons. Su Zimo listened attentively. He could vaguely sense that a majestic ancient secret was about to unfold before his eyes. Uncle Liang said, "Legend has it that in the primordial era, there were thousands of races on this land. Among them, the primordial 9 races reigned supreme and were known as the primordial 9 races. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly recalled something. Back in the primordial ruin of Great Zhou, he and Lin Xuanji were hiding in the cave of the mystical Mountain of Dragons when they heard the Palace Lord of Blood Crow Palace pleading to the Divine Dragon. We're both from the primordial 9 races. If the dragons were one of the primordial 9 races, the Palace Lord of Blood Crow Palace should be one of them as well. If that was the case, it would explain why even the Emperor of Great Zhou was wary of him. Uncle Liang continued. In the primordial era, humans were weak and were enslaved by the thousands of races. Their lives were worthless and they had no dignity. They were bullied by the thousands of races and led a life worse than death. That was a tragic period for the human race that was unbearable to recall. There was a hint of sorrow in Uncle Liang's tone. A scene seemed to appear before Su Zimo's eyes. Countless humans lived pitifully under the whips of the thousands of races. The land was vast and corpses of humans could be seen everywhere, trampled on by the thousands of races. The human race was enslaved and reared by the thousands of races. They were the most popular food for the thousands of races and could be consumed at any moment. As time passed, that situation did not change. It was only at the end of the primordial era that the human race finally welcomed a turn for the better. For some unknown reason, a chaotic war broke out between the thousands of races. Bones and blood flowed for thousands of miles. That war was earth-shattering and ghosts and gods howled for many years. Blood chi surged and countless races were destroyed. After the chaotic war of the thousands of races ended, only 100 races were left and the primordial era ended. All the cultivators were immersed in the secrets of the primordial era that Uncle Liang recounted. No one noticed that Night Spirit, who was originally taking a nap beside Xiaoning, had opened his eyes unknowingly. A cold murderous intent flashed across his dark eyes from time to time, followed by a look of confusion. It was as if he was trying hard to recall something. After the primordial era ended, we entered the primordial era. Uncle Liang took a deep breath before continuing. It was because of that chaotic war that the thousands of races could not even fend for themselves. That was why the human race was able to recuperate and seize the opportunity to rise. Humans were born weak. Therefore, they comprehended heaven and earth and created many dermic formulations and secret skills to improve their physiques. Since they did not have claws, they refined weapons, created talismans and wielded battle swords and spears as our claws. The human race established a cultivation civilization and emperors rose. In order to break free from the fate of being enslaved, the human race revolted under the lead of the emperors. They fought against the 100 races led by the primordial 9 races and fought for the future of the human race. A glorious era that belonged to the human race had finally arrived. When they heard that, many cultivators were moved to tears, as though they were reversing time and returning to the primordial era to witness the rise of the human race in that glorious era. Su Zimo gripped his fists tightly as well, feeling emotional and his arms trembling slightly. Uncle Liang sighed softly and said, "An epic war broke out between the human race and the 100 primordial races. It lasted for a very long time, and countless human experts and ancient powerhouses fell. The emperors were dyed in blood. It was an extremely tragic battle. You guys have heard of that war as well. It was the ancient war." Su Zimo nodded. Back then, when Tang Yu was recounting the legend of the Saber Emperor, she had mentioned the ancient war. However, at that time, Tang Yu's description was rather vague and Su Zimo did not know the reason for the ancient war either. It was only now that Su Zimo understood. The ancient war was a war that allowed the human race to break free from their destiny. That war concerned the fortune of the human race as well. The human race could not afford to lose. If they lost, the situation of the human race would be even worse than in the primordial era, and they would no longer have a chance to rise. Chapter 431. Uncle Liang said. The ancient war lasted for a long time and spanned almost the entire ancient era. During it, countless human cultivators risked their lives to save the masses from calamity, creating a tragic tale of the human race's golden age. The primordial 9 races were way too strong. In the primordial era, when the 10,000 races were established, they dominated Tianhuang mainland. Under the lead of the primordial 9 races, the 100 races joined forces and the human race retreated repeatedly. The territory they occupied became smaller and smaller, and could be devoured by the 100 races led by the primordial 9 races at any moment. The destruction of the human race was imminent. Although they already knew that the outcome of the ancient war was a great victory for the human race, everyone could not help but feel nervous when they heard that. Uncle Liang took a deep breath of air and said in a deep voice, "In this chaotic world, the human emperor appeared and reversed the collapse of the heavens. He suppressed the 4 regions and 3 seas almost single-handedly. He killed the emperors of the 100 races and severed the fortune of the primordial 9 races. He swept through Tianhuang mainland and everywhere he passed, everyone bowed down. Dragon emperors of dragons and Protoss divine children? All of them had to die in the face of the human emperor. Some descendants commented that the 100 races submitted to the birth of the human emperor. Many cultivators opened their mouths in shock and could not calm down for a long time. The outcome of the ancient war was the defeat of the 100 races, and they were almost wiped out. The primordial 9 races suffered heavy losses as well and hid in their own corners of Tianhuang mainland, rarely appearing in the world. These 9 regions are known as the 9 Great Forbidden Lands. When he heard that, Su Zimo shuddered. He had once heard Demoness Ji mention the 9 Forbidden Grounds. It was said that any living being that entered them would definitely die. At this moment, the doubts in Su Zimo's heart were finally resolved. The origin of the 9 Forbidden Grounds was the primordial 9 races that once dominated Tianhuang mainland. From what Uncle Liang said, if not for the birth of the human emperor in the ancient era, the human race would not have been a match for the primordial 9 races. The human emperor had long left, but the legacy of the primordial 9 races was passed down. Suddenly, Su Zimo thought of something terrifying. If the primordial 9 races were to appear once more in this generation and descend upon Tianhuang mainland from the 9 Forbidden Grounds, who would be able to stop them if the human race no longer had a human emperor? This kind of worry was rather groundless. Su Zimo had only thought of that because of the appearance of the Palace Lord of Blood Crow Palace. Su Zimo shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Uncle Liang continued, "From then on, the human race prospered. The ancient era came to an end and we entered this era. Today, no one knows the name of the human emperor, but because he ruled over the ages and suppressed the world, the human race called him the human emperor. His descendants all call him the eternal human emperor. Because of the appearance of the human sovereign, the 100 races were destroyed and the ancient 9 races disappeared without a trace. An era came to an end. Therefore, the ancient era was also known as the era of the human sovereign, the eternal human emperor." Uncle Liang continued, "Ever since the ancient era, time has passed and the world has changed. Generations of emperors have appeared in Tianhuang mainland. However, none of them dared to call themselves the human emperor, nor did anyone have the right to be conferred the title of eternal." Hearing this, Su Zimo slowly exhaled, only these words echoing in his mind. "I can almost predict that the area beneath the human emperor's palace will be filled with blood and corpses. Who knows, there might be many innocent sects that will be dragged in just to watch the show. We have many ancient books of Elixir Pool sect on us and we can't afford to lose them. I won't let Elixir Yang sect take the risk." Su Zimo nodded. "I'll take a look at such a rare occasion but I won't participate." At that moment Su Zimo lied. Tang Yu more or less understood Su Zimo's temperament and knew that he would not change his mind easily once he made up his mind. Tang Yu did not try to persuade him and merely reminded, "If you notice anything amiss with the situation, leave immediately. Don't get dragged in." "Thank you." Su Zimo cupped his fists and bowed. Actually, the human emperor's palace has another attraction for Foundation establishment cultivators, suddenly Uncle Liang said. "Legend has it that after 8 Meridian Foundation establishment, there's a final spirit meridian that can be unlocked. 9 Meridian Foundation establishment. 9 is the limit, and that's why 9 Meridian Foundation establishment is also known as Extreme Foundation establishment." When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. That was the feeling that he had. When he unlocked his 7th spirit meridian, he did not feel that it was as difficult as others described. Su Zimo guessed that it might have something to do with the purity of his spirit energy. Up till this point of his cultivation, He had never consumed an elixir that was impure. Legend has it that the human emperor was the only one who managed to unlock the illusory ninth spirit meridian. Uncle Liang continued, of course, that's only a legend. After all, throughout history, apart from the human emperor, no one else has been able to unlock the ninth spirit meridian. Even the 7 cultivators who left their footprints in the human emperor's palace did not manage to do so. Therefore, some people want to enter the human emperor's palace to search for the secrets of extreme foundation establishment. Chapter 432. The second day after the descent of the human emperor's palace, Su Zimo left Xiantian City. Is almost equal to he did not bring the night spirit with him. Instead, he chose to let it accompany Xiaoning and protect her. Although Xiaoning had obtained the inheritance of Elixir Pool sect, and would definitely be valued after joining Elixir Yang sect, Su Zimo was still worried. He would only feel slightly more at ease if the night spirit followed her. After returning from Elixir Pool sect, Xiaoning was exceptionally happy. That was because she finally found an elixir that could increase one's lifespan in the inheritance memories of Elixir Pool sect. The longevity elixir. However, the longevity elixir was a grade 3 elixir. Given Xiaoning's current elixir refinement standards, she could not refine it at all. Before leaving, Xiaoning smiled and said to Su Zimo, "Don't worry. I'll definitely refine the longevity elixir as soon as possible to extend your life." The only reason why Xiaoning became an elixir refinement master was to extend her brother's life. When he recalled Xiaoning's smile, Su Zimo was in a great mood and could not help but smile. Su Zimo did not choose to travel with anyone. That was because from the moment he was prepared to fight for the inheritance of the human emperor's palace, he had already decided to change his appearance and hide his identity and background. With the descent of the human emperor's palace, Su Zimo would have to face almost all the major sects in Tianhuang mainland. If a huge battle were to break out and he was bloodthirsty, it would be difficult to clean up the mess. Furthermore, Su Zimo had a desire in his heart. He wanted to fight to his heart's content without hiding his demonic cultivation or hiding anything. He wanted to fight to his heart's content with all the paragons. Since there was a chance of him taking on a demon form, Su Zimo had to change his appearance. Even if the major sects wanted to settle scores, they wouldn't be able to find him. In order to ensure that nothing went wrong, Su Zimo would not use any methods that could expose his identity. As he sped along, a series of crackling sounds could be heard from Su Zimo's body as his tendons and bones rang together. His body grew taller and his flesh expanded. Even his facial features were beginning to change. In the blink of an eye, the original Su Zimo had completely disappeared. Instead, he was replaced by a burly man who was 2 meters tall. He had a rough face, thick eyebrows, big eyes, a high nose, and a wide mouth. There was nothing delicate about him anymore. Su Zimo turned his hand and condensed a mirror made of spiritual energy. After examining it for a while, he was extremely satisfied and grinned. The original green robe no longer fit this burly figure. Su Zimo rummaged through his storage pouch for a while and took out a coarse hemp robe. He casually put it on, leaving his chest open. He looked bold and unrestrained, not bothering with trifles. Unless it was Jining Zhenjuan who spread out his divine sense to investigate Su Zimo's body. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to see through the flaws in Su Zimo's appearance. This was the ancient battlefield where there were at most some Jin Dan realm sealers. In other words, the chances of Su Zimo being exposed were 0. Under the sky, the human emperor palace was still descending slowly, emanating endless pressure. The closer they were to the human emperor palace, the more obvious that feeling became. If they wanted to fight for the human emperor palace's inheritance, everyone had to rush to the region enveloped by the human emperor palace where the final battle would take place. Su Zimo sprinted day and night without stopping. 3 days later, Su Zimo's ears twitched and he caught the faint sounds of fighting coming from the southwest, mixed with some angry roars. In the ancient battlefield, it was extremely normal for fights to occur. Even strangers who met by chance could suddenly get into trouble, let alone a disagreement. As such, Su Zimo did not want to bother about it at all. However, he did not walk for long when his expression changed. Frowning slightly, He stopped in his tracks and perked up his ears to listen carefully. He seemed to have heard a familiar voice in the midst of the fight. After a moment of hesitation, Su Zimo changed his direction and sprinted towards the battlefield in the southwest. Poof! A gigantic head was severed with blood gushing out like a fountain. A 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator channeled his spirit energy and wielded a long and narrow spirit saber, engaging in an intense battle against 4 cultivators. There were a few corpses on the ground and their blood was still warm. It was clear that they had just died. Beside the battlefield, a young girl stood prettily. Wearing a pink dress and a veil, she clapped her hands with a smile in her eyes. "Fellow Taoist, you're amazing. Another bad guy is dead. Don't worry, miss. I Ding Hongxian will definitely protect you." On the battlefield, the 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator who was fighting against 4 turned around and shouted to the girl in pink. "Ding Hongxian, are you crazy?" On the opposite side, a man hollered, "That's a demoness behind you. Don't be bewitched by her and lose yourself." "Senior brother Ding, why must we fight amongst ourselves? It's not too late to enjoy ourselves after we restrain this peerless beauty." Another cultivator blocked Ding Hongxuan's spirit saber and said while panting, "There's no need to say anymore. She's already bewitched by the demoness and has completely lost her mind. Don't hesitate, kill her." Among the 4 of them, an older cultivator said darkly. When they heard that, the 4 of them were ruthless characters and were extremely decisive as they released killing moves in succession, killing Ding Hongxian on the spot. Turning around, the older cultivator walked towards the girl in pink without concealing the lust in his eyes as he said with a smile, "Demoness, don't worry. Once you're in my hands, I'll definitely take good care of you." The girl in pink did not retreat either. She stood there with a pitiful expression as her gaze darted across the faces of the 4 of them. She said in a tearful manner, But I'm only one person. There are 4 of you, is that so?" The older cultivator's gaze turned cold as he said coldly, "Then I'll kill all of them." Just as the older cultivator was about to turn around, a bright sword tip pierced through his chest with fresh blood dripping. Instantly, blood drained from the older cultivator's face and his eyes regained clarity. However, it was too late. "Senior brother Liu, you're still thinking of keeping her all to yourself." Behind the older cultivator, a young cultivator wielded a long sword with a menacing expression and a crazed look in his eyes, shouting, "That woman is mine. Don't fight with me for her. Mad. You guys are truly mad." Another cultivator glared and said coldly, "How dare you disregard your ties as fellow sect members for a woman? Since that's the case, I'll clean up the sect today." Clang! 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 Poof! Poof! The remaining 3 cultivators were embroiled in a chaotic battle and had already lost themselves completely. Before long, 2 of them fell into a pool of blood and only regained their senses right before their deaths. However, it was already too late. The remaining person had a mental breakdown and committed suicide on the spot. In the blink of an eye, the remaining 4 cultivators were all dead. As for the girl in pink, she did not even move a single finger and watched coldly from the sidelines with a hint of mockery in her eyes. This was the true definition of a bloodless massacre. Umitba, not far away, a Buddhist proclamation sounded. "Female patron, you're so vicious. Sooner or later, you'll fall into the 18 levels of hell and suffer the consequences of your actions. If you put down your butcher's knife now and convert to Buddhism, there might still be a chance for you." End of chapter. Chapter 433. When she heard that voice, the girl in pink frowned and turned towards the source of the voice. Not far away, a gigantic demon beast that was dozens of feet tall walked over slowly. It had the face of a human, the body of a tiger, sharp claws and fangs and 9 tails. It had a ferocious gaze and exuded a terrifying aura. The girl in pink's expression changed slightly beneath her veil as she opened her cherry lips and spat out, "Lu Wu." Lu Wu was a pure-blooded ferocious beast that resembled a tiger. It had a ferocious temperament and possessed immense strength. A series of bloodied corpses hung from Lu Wu's 9 tails, and the stench of blood filled the air in a horrifying manner. Some of them had been dead for a long time and were already dried. However, they still had a stench. There were some bloodstains that hadn't dried yet, still dripping with blood, dripping onto the ground. There were about 1,000 corpses on the Ninetails and they were dressed differently. It was clear that they came from different sects and factions. Lu Wu swayed his 9 tails and the 1,000 corpses swayed in midair, emitting a nauseating stench of rotting corpses. A look of disgust flashed through the girl in pink's eyes. In the ancient battlefield, even pure-blooded ferocious beasts did not dare to condense their inner cores. Naturally, they could not speak in human language. But Lu Wu's words were spoken by someone else right now. A bald, barefooted figure sat on top of Lu Wu's head, draped in golden monk robes. His eyes were bright and his face shone brightly. The 1,000 corpses behind him seemed to have transformed into a sea of blood and corpses. This cultivator was like a ferocious Vajra that floated within, dignified and untainted. This was a man who could subdue pure-blooded ferocious beasts. Oh, so it's a monk from Diamond Monastery. The girl in pink glanced at the sect badge on the monk's waist and recognized his background. Blinking, her beautiful eyes rippled and she had already secretly used a bewitching secret skill of Ecstasy Sect. The girl in pink was none other than Demoness G of Ecstasy Sect. She asked with a bright smile, How should I address you, master? I'm Ju Chun. The monk from Diamond Monastery was expressionless and did not have any emotions. Demoness G's bewitchment was useless against him. Master Ju Chun, Demoness G remarked pitifully, as someone of the Buddhist monasteries, why don't you have any compassion in your heart? Your words are so vicious that you're cursing someone to fall into the 18 levels of hell. Demoness G's eyes shone with a bewitching glint that caused one's heart to flutter. This was the sign of the reincarnation sect's secret technique, being pushed to the extreme. Eyes of enchantment. Just now, when she was bewitching those few cultivators, Demoness G did not even use that secret skill. Her every move and smile was enough to bewitch everyone. Monk Ju Chen's expression changed slightly and his thick brows suddenly arched. Widening his eyes, his eyeballs bulged slightly in a ferocious manner. 2 golden beams of light burst forth from Monk Ju Chen's eyes and collided against Demoness G's bewitching eye. In the world of cultivation, there were very few secret techniques for cultivating the eyes. Those that could be called secret techniques were even rarer. The reason was simple. His eyes were too fragile. The slightest mistake in his cultivation could easily injure his eyes. However, the enraged diamond gaze of the Buddhist monasteries and the bewitching eye of the reincarnation sect of the fiend monasteries could be considered as top-tier secret techniques for cultivating the eyes. Ordinary cultivators would be scared out of their wits after being glared at by the enraged diamond gaze. In fact, some of them might even be scared out of their wits on the spot. The eyes of enchantment could even affect a cultivator's mind, causing them to lose themselves completely and their rationality. The eyes could read the mind. Therefore, top-tier secret techniques of the eyes could affect a cultivator's mind as well. Roar! Monk Ju Chun opened his mouth and roared. His voice rumbled like thunder and was filled with an upright and holy aura. How dare you, Demoness? How dare you put up a resistance even at the brink of death? You deserve to die for releasing such evil arts to mess with my mind. Demoness G's heart skipped a beat and she grunted dully, her face turning paler. Although there were no flashes of swords in the exchange, it was actually even more dangerous. At the same time that Demoness G used the eyes of enchantment, she was attacking Monk Ju Chen's mental state verbally as well. Once Ju Chen's mind was shaken and revealed an opening, it would be easy for Demoness G to control his mind. However, it was a pity that Demoness G was against a monk of Diamond Monastery. Buddhists had a pure heart and few desires. Meditating and praying to Buddha, their 6 senses were purified and their mental state was the most stable. Furthermore, Diamond Monastery had a secret technique of the enraged diamond gaze that countered the eyes of enchantment, the most in terms of strength. It was also because Demoness G was unlucky that she was against the successor of Diamond Monastery, who countered her the most in the Buddhist monasteries. The moment the two of them exchanged blows, Demoness G was disadvantaged. Damned monk! When Demoness G saw that her secret technique was useless and was countered by her opponent, she could not help but be enraged as she hollered, "What are you hollering for? There's a Chun in your dermic name. Your master must have told you to refrain from anger. However, You've already violated the precept of anger today. Demoness, I'm not only going to violate the precept of anger today, I'm going to violate the precept of killing as well. Monk Juchan had a calm expression as he stood up slowly on the head of the pure-blooded ferocious beast, Luwu. Demoness Ji grit her teeth in hatred and said coldly, "Damned monk, the Buddhist monasteries emphasize on karma. What's the logic of attacking me without asking for the reason? That's the logic of subduing evil fiends. These people were clearly the ones who lusted after me first. That's why I attacked." Demoness Ji grit her teeth. "Damned monk, you're truly despicable for not asking for the truth. There's no need to say anything else. Demoness, prepare to die." Monk Juchan leaped down from Luwu's head. Beneath his monk robes, 8 spirit meridians surged as spirit energy surged like a tsunami. Boom! Extending his palm, Monk Juchen's body shone with a golden light, as though he was plated with a layer of gold. Shimmering with a divine nature, he was dazzling and could not be looked at directly. A gigantic palm descended from the skies, blanketing the skies and enveloping Demoness Ji within. Most of Demoness Ji's methods were based on her bewitchment techniques. There was no way she was a match for Monk Juchan in a head-on combat. When she saw how menacing that palm was, Demoness Ji tapped the ground with her toes and retreated, wanting to escape from Monk Juchen's attack range. "Demoness, where are you running to?" Monk Juchan saw through Demoness Ji's intentions right away and hollered, taking 8 consecutive steps and arriving instantly. In the blink of an eye, the distance between the two of them was less than 10 feet. Diamond Monastery was the sect with the strongest body tempering and the most frightening melee combat strength in the Buddhist monasteries. At this distance, even the fiend heirs of malevolent earth sect, illusion fiend cult or lust sect of the fiend sects would be doomed, let alone Demoness Ji of lust sect. Among the fiend sects, only the fiend heir of Overlord Palace could match the successor of Diamond Monastery in melee combat. Monk Juchan released killing moves consecutively. After 3 moves, Demoness Ji was already forced into a corner, and the veil on her face was long gone. Her life was hanging by a thread. "Die!" Monk Juchan roared once more in a shocking manner. His gigantic fist shone with a bedazzling golden light as it arrived before Demoness Ji instantly. The golden light was blinding and the fist wind was like a knife, causing Demoness Ji's cheeks to hurt. Her heart sank. To think that I, the Demoness of Lust sect, would die here today. Before that thought was finished, the situation on the battlefield changed. End of chapter. Chapter 434. Unknowingly, a tall and burly figure appeared behind Demoness Ji. Reaching out, that person grabbed Demoness Ji's arm and pulled her back. Thereafter he clenched his left hand into a fist and punched towards Monk Juchen's golden fist. That punch had a domineering aura, as though it wanted to punch a hole in the firmaments and strike down the sun. In melee combat, there were not many cultivators who could take on the successor of Diamond Monastery bare-handed. The successor of Glass Palace of the Immortal Sects was one of them, and the fiend heir of Overlord Palace of the Fiend Sects had that capability as well. Cultivators of the other sects would have to avoid his sharpness. From the corner of her eye, Demoness Ji noticed that the person did not have any waist badge on his waist. Furthermore, he was dressed in coarse hemp robes. It was clear that he was not a cultivator of Glass Palace or Overlord Palace. If that was the case, this person would definitely be at a disadvantage if he chose to take Monk Juchen's punch head-on. "Don't," Demoness Ji reminded him, but it was too late. It was as though she could already see the tragic scene of the burly man's hand being broken and his arm being reduced to a bloody mist as a look of pity flashed through her eyes. "You're asking for it," Monk Juchan sneered. Bang! The fists collided with a deafening sound. It was as though he was defeated. The moment the mocking expression appeared on Monk Juchen's face, it vanished instantly as he narrowed his eyes and his pupils constricted to the size of needles. Demoness Ji was dumbfounded and dumbfounded. The golden light on Monk Juchen's fist was shattered by the burly man's punch and scattered everywhere like sparks. A visible shockwave burst forth from the collision of the fists, and a heat wave surged forward with a shocking force. The burly man did not retreat at all and his fist was unharmed. On the contrary, Monk Juchan staggered 3 steps back and his expression darkened. Holding Demoness Ji's arm, the burly man pulled her behind him and shielded her with a calm expression. He glared at Monk Juchan opposite him with a sharp gaze. The appearance of the burly man calmed the situation down for the time being. Both Monk Juchan and Demoness Ji sized up the burly man, as though they wanted to make out something from him. The burly man had a rough appearance with thick brows, large eyes, a tall nose and wide mouth. He was a full 2 meters tall and his palms were rough with thick fingers. When he clenched his fists, they were like a pair of hammers. She furrowed her brows slightly. She could not find anything familiar about the burly man. What was certain was that she had never seen this person before, let alone know who he was. However, for some reason she felt that something was amiss. Demoness Ji tilted her head in deep thought. Monk Juchan observed the burly man from head to toe a few times but could not see anything special about him. He could not help but ask in a low voice, "Which sect does this benefactor belong to?" "I don't belong to any sect," the burly man in sackcloth said indifferently. "Amiba." Monk Juchan chanted a Buddhist proclamation and his gaze turned cold. "Since you're an itinerant cultivator, I'd advise you not to get involved in this mess, lest you get yourself into trouble." "Oh." The burly man grinned and said in an overbearing manner, "I insist on interfering. What can you do about it? Do you know that the girl behind you is a lay feng of the fiend sex? She kills without batting an eyelid and her hands are stained with the blood of countless people." Monk Juchan's voice grew louder and rumbled with the divinity of the Buddhist sections. "Master, you have a lot of blood on your hands as well. I'm from the Buddhist sects and she's from the fiend sects. So what?" The two of them were at odds with each other, and the atmosphere on the battlefield turned tense with a murderous intent. However, at that moment Demoness Ji's heart was unprecedentedly calm. The tall and broad figure in front of her seemed to be able to shield her from all the wind and rain, preventing her from getting hurt at all, even if she was from the fiend sections. Good. Monk Juchan nodded repeatedly and 2 golden beams of light burst forth from his eyes as his aura surged. It was the secret skill of the Buddhist sects, Enraged Diamond Gaze. Not only could the secret skill affect a cultivator's mind, it was also an instantaneous technique that was difficult for opponents to defend against. Watch out! When Demoness Ji saw Monk Juchan's flickering gaze, she already sensed that something was amiss. However, the moment she reminded him, her voice was drowned out by Monk Juchan's sacred voice of the Buddhist sects. "If you choose to protect this woman, you'll be making an enemy out of Diamond Monastery, the Buddhist sects and the entire Orthodox immortal sects." Monk Juchan hollered loudly, pausing after every word. His voice was like a bell that shook one's mind. That was a sound secret skill unique to the Buddhist sects, Lion's Roar. Earlier on, Monk Juchan relied on those 2 instantaneous techniques to injure Demoness Ji and gain the upper hand. Under normal circumstances, when ordinary cultivators were attacked by those 2 instantaneous techniques, their eyes would hurt and their ears would buzz. In their panic, they would definitely reveal openings. However, the burly man's expression was unchanged and his eyes shone with a demonic glint. The 2 golden beams of light that pierced through the air dissipated silently. The burly man took a deep breath of air and his chest puffed up. His entire body seemed to have expanded slightly, as though he was an air balloon that had just been inflated. The next moment, the burly man opened his mouth and interrupted Monk Juchan domineeringly, hollering, "Fight!" Boom! The moment he said that word, it was earth-shattering. Like a thunderclap, it rumbled over like a massive army with a massive aura. Before Monk Juchan could finish, he was interrupted by the burly man and the air in his chest was cut off. It was extremely uncomfortable and his face was pale as his aura was thwarted. The 2 of them were extremely close and the burly man arrived before Monk Juchan in almost the blink of an eye with huge strides. Boom! The burly man stomped heavily on the ground and the earth quaked. 2 gigantic ravines were formed on the ground behind him as mud churned. Demoness Ji was shocked and her alluring red lips were agape as she watched everything unfold in disbelief. How was that a human? Even pure-blooded ferocious beasts would not be able to cause such a commotion. The pure-blooded ferocious beast, Luwu, who was standing behind Monk Juchan, was initially watching coldly from the sidelines. Chapter 435. Monk Juchan was like a wooden stake that was pinned to the ground by the burly man's gigantic palm. Unable to break free, his bones creaked wildly. Close combat was the most dangerous. Victory and defeat could often be decided in 2 or 3 moves. Monk Juchan had underestimated his opponent, and his enraged diamond stare and lion roar were countered one after another. In his shock, the burly man gained the upper hand. A single mistake and he was reduced to this state. Monk Juchan was pinned to the spot by the palm and could not move at all. At that moment, no matter how many methods Monk Juchan had, he could not use them or even the spirit weapons of the Buddhist monasteries that he carried with him. This was a clash of strength. As long as Monk Juchan was distracted and lost his strength, he would be crushed into meat paste by the burly man's palm without a corpse left. Demonist was dumbfounded. What was the background of this man? To think that he could pin the successor of Diamond Monastery to the spot with a single palm. Suddenly, the burly man nodded with a look of admiration in his eyes. It's already not bad that you can withstand that attack. Diamond Monastery does have some capabilities. Demonist was dumbfounded. What was he doing? Wasn't his tone way too arrogant? Which cultivator in Tianhuang mainland had the right to speak to the successor of Diamond Monastery as such? The strange thing was that when the burly man said that, it seemed as though he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Of course, what shocked Demonist even more was that Monk Juchan was completely focused and tense despite the intense clash of strength. He did not dare to relax at all and did not even dare to breathe. However, the burly man could still speak. In other words, he still had strength left. The burly man was none other than Su Zimo, who had changed his appearance. Pei Chunyu of Glass Palace was defeated by him as well, and he was naturally qualified to make such an evaluation. Su Zimo had attained lesser mastery of the orifice clearing section and cleared all 7 orifices, giving him strong eyesight and hearing. Monk Juchan's enraged diamond stare and lion roar could not affect his mind at all. A look of embarrassment flashed through Monk Juchan's eyes. As the successor of the Vajra Temple, when had he ever been humiliated like this? When had he ever been suppressed like this? Su Zimo's condescending attitude ignited the rage in Monk Juchan's heart. Do you really think that you can beat me like this? Gritting his teeth, Monk Juchan's eyes shone with a golden glint as he uttered slowly, "The heart should be born from nowhere." Clang! The moment he said that, a deafening sound echoed from Monk Juchan's chest with a clear metallic intent. It was as though there was an indestructible power that could pierce through metal and stone, wanting to gush out from Monk Juchan's chest. Su Zimo could clearly sense that the metallic sound earlier on was Monk Juchan's heartbeat. The moment he said that, Monk Juchan's bloodline surged and the strength in his arms increased significantly. Instantly, he stabilized his body that was on the verge of collapsing. Su Zimo's eyes lit up as he nodded. Interesting. Demonist said hurriedly, "Be careful. That's the profoundness of the Vajra Sutra, the secret classic of Vajra Temple. The heart should be born from nowhere, and you'll eventually cultivate a Vajra heart." Clang! The heartbeat sounded once more, interrupting Demonist words. This time round, the metallic sound was even clearer and more ear-piercing, as though it could destroy and penetrate through everything. The blood in Monk Juchan's body circulated slowly, and the sound of lead and mercury flowing could be heard. Lead and mercury blood. That was almost the limit of the power of his bloodline. Above that, the only thing left was the illusory tsunami of blood in the legends. The strength in Monk Juchan's arms increased tremendously, and he held Su Zimo's palms up instead. His aura rose continuously and his eyes shone with a maniacal light. Demonist continued, "With every beat of the Vajra heart, one's marrow will be replaced with blood, tendons and bones. Cultivate continuously and at the limit, your body can even reach an indestructible state and you can fight against pure-blooded ferocious beasts." Clang! 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 As though to prove how frightening the Vajra heart was, Monk Juchan's heartbeat sped up and his blood surged within his body. Whoosh! The sound of lead and mercury flowing could be heard endlessly. "Patron, you must be dreaming if you want to kill me with a single palm strike." Monk Juchan spoke slowly and his voice was like a metallic spear, sonorous and powerful. Gradually, his entire body was shrouded in a shimmering golden glow. The power of his bloodline stimulated by the Vajra heart had already spread through his limbs and bones, surging to every part of his body. Fu Su Zimo chuckled gently. Dong! A deafening sound exploded without warning, as though a divine being was beating a heavenly drum with all his might. It was deep and powerful, shocking one's heart. The sound was so close that it suppressed Monk Juchen's heartbeat. Pust! Monk Juchen's expression changed starkly. He was face to face with Su Zimo, and could naturally tell that the sound came from the other party's chest as well. A sense of uneasiness surged through Monk Juchen's heart. Without time to think, Monk Juchen raised his arms and pushed the power of his bloodline to its limits. Leaping into the air, he wanted to break free from Su Zimo's suppression. Monk Juchen hollered, "Break!" Rumble! Boom! Boom! Right then, a deafening boom sounded from Su Zimo's body. It was as though a tsunami was crashing against the shore with a majestic aura. Standing opposite Su Zimo, Monk Juchen felt as though he was hallucinating. He was like a small boat in the raging sea, and he could be drowned at any moment and be washed away by the tide until not even his bones remained. That was not a human strength. It was the might of heaven and earth. Tsunami blood. Demoness G's ears twitched and her expression changed starkly when she heard that sound, as well as she exclaimed. Since ancient times, the limit of one's bloodline cultivation was the tsunami blood realm. There were extremely few cultivators who could cultivate to that realm. Demoness G had met someone like that before. Back then, there was an ancient spirit lock formation in the depths of the underground. That person was decisive in his killing and was unparalleled in his strength, defeating 5 fiend heirs single-handedly. Although many years had passed, that scene was still etched in the depths of her memories as though it was yesterday. When she recalled that green-robed figure with a delicate face, Demoness G could not connect that person to the burly man in linen robes before her. Get back! Su Zimo's expression was calm and his voice was calm. However, the tsunami blood within his body surged with a frightening aura. His thick palm was filled with blood and green veins popped. Expanding by an inch, it blocked Monk Juchen's vision and sealed off all his escape routes before crushing down viciously. Monk Juchen grunted dully. He had just made use of the explosion of his diamond heart to leap up. However, before he could break free from Su Zimo's grasp, he was pushed back once more. The golden light on Monk Juchen's arms dimmed. Poof! His flesh exploded and a blood mist burst forth. Monk Juchen shuddered and his spine was bent. His knees were almost on the ground. He felt as though there was a massive mountain above his head, or as though the firmaments were collapsing, trying to destroy him. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 436. If this were to continue, Monk Juchen would die here within 3 breaths. Roar! Right then, a deafening roar of a ferocious beast sounded. A shadow shrouded over, covering the skies as a tragic aura surged over in a suffocating manner. The pure-blooded ferocious beast Luwu, that was dozens of feet tall, lunged over with a thick stench of blood. It had a ferocious gaze, sharp claws and fangs, and a menacing expression. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Pure-blooded ferocious beasts were extremely strong and their claws and fangs were not inferior to perfect spirit weapons. In fact, there were even some unique weapons that were made from the bones and fangs of pure-blooded ferocious beasts. Good timing! Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he pressed down on Monk Juchen with one hand. His other hand was clenched into a fist as his tendons rippled and his bloodline surged. His fist expanded rapidly, resembling a purplish-green seal with a torrential blood chi. Standing on the spot, Su Zimo looked like an indomitable ancient divine being. Wielding a purplish-green seal in his left hand, he smashed it towards Luwu's head viciously. This fist smashed out with a terrifying aura. Even the air was instantly compressed and exploded, causing a loud bang. As a pure-blooded ferocious beast, Luwu naturally knew how powerful it was. Although its skull was tough, it did not dare to take Su Zimo's fist head-on and hurriedly extended its claws to receive it. Bang! There was a deafening sound. Luwu shuddered and fell from midair. Su Zimo stood on the spot motionlessly. His tendons and bones rang together as his eyes lit up with a torrential fighting spirit. Demoness G's heart skipped a beat as she watched. This was a truly ruthless person. Humans had weak physiques and were born without sharp fangs and claws. It was way too difficult for them to cultivate to a level where they could fight against pure-blooded ferocious beasts. What was even more frightening was that the burly man before her was equivalent to fighting two alone. He was suppressing Monk Ju-chan with one hand and fighting against the pure-blooded ferocious beast with the other. The fact that he was not disadvantaged despite his strength being split. His combat strength was even more shocking. Since when did such a ferocious person appear in Tianhuang mainland? Which sect was this cultivator from? The thing that puzzled her the most was that she could not see any signs of secret skills or cultivation techniques on the burly man. Roar! Lu Wu fell from the sky, but he was not injured. He shook his body and leaped up again. The 9 tails behind Lu Wu trembled, and the thousands of corpses that were connected to each other exploded. Blood mist gushed out, forming a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Swish! Swish! Lu Wu stepped on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood as he charged over. His 9 tails swayed like steel whips, and the wind whistled as they enveloped Su Zimo. The reason why pure-blooded ferocious beasts were powerful was not only because of their pure bloodline and terrifying strength. More importantly, most of the pure-blooded ferocious beasts had some killing moves that other demonic beasts did not have. It was similar to the hook snake in the Misty Valley. Its tail was a huge hook that was tainted with poison. The hook was indestructible and sharp. Even Night Spirit's defense could not withstand it. It was the same for Lu Wu. Its 9 tails swayed behind it, forming a sealed space. It attacked from different directions like 9 steel whips, difficult to defend against and quite troublesome. Piak! Su Zimo reached out and scooped in midair, grabbing onto one of Lu Wu's thick tails. However, Su Zimo could not defend against the other 8 tails. Even with his strong physique, he would not feel good if the 8 tails smashed onto his body. Even his organs would be shaken. With no other choice, Su Zimo released his palm that was suppressing Monk Ju-chen's head. Monk Ju-chen finally had a chance to catch his breath. His diamond heart throbbed and his diamond bloodline burst forth. Leaping out of the ground, he fled into the distance without turning back. He would not be able to hold on for another couple of breaths. Monk Ju-chan broke out in cold sweat, feeling as though he had just taken a trip to the gates of hell. Boom! Su Zimo landed on the ground and retreated explosively. Grabbing onto a tail with both hands, his arms trembled violently as he retreated. That tremendous power was transmitted to Lu Wu through the tails. Lu Wu shuddered and his body almost fell apart. Instantly, the other 8 tails lost their momentum and lost their sense of direction. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo tugged on the thick tail in his hands and swung Lu Wu's massive body in an arc, smashing it onto the ground fiercely. There was a loud boom. Dust flew everywhere. Even Demoness G was dumbfounded. The scene before her eyes had already exceeded her understanding. What kind of terrifying power did he have to be able to do this? A moment later, the dust dispersed and a huge pit could be seen on the ground. It was filled with cracks and Lu Wu laid within, moaning helplessly with a dim gaze. Demoness G's throat twitched as she gulped instinctively. This time, the bones in Lu Wu's body would most likely be smashed to pieces. In that short period of time, Monk Ju-chan had already escaped and was far away in the horizon. Turning back, Monk Ju-chen's face was pale gold, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his lips. This time round he had suffered a huge setback. After all, he managed to withstand Su Zimo's first palm strike. However, the moment his aura rose for the second palm strike, Su Zimo pressed him back to the spot. His body could not take it anymore, and the flesh on his arms exploded while his organs were dislocated. Monk Ju-chan was extremely aggrieved for this battle. Although Su Zimo's strength was shocking, he felt that he might not lose to Su Zimo in a life-and-death battle. The moment the two of them exchanged blows, he was pinned to the spot by Su Zimo. Even if he had all sorts of methods, he could not use them at all. He did not even have the least bit of Buddhist spirit weapons. If he used the Vajra scepter and the bell of Vajra from his storage pouch, his battle prowess would at least double, and he would definitely be able to kill this burly man right here and now. Although that was what he thought, Monk Ju-chan did not dare to fight against Su Zimo in his current state. Burly man, I underestimated you today. The next time we meet, I'll definitely take you down. Monk Juchen's voice sounded from afar with endless indignance. Haha. Su Zimo reared his head in laughter and declared, Monk, if you dare to go against me the next time we meet, you won't be able to escape. Monk Juchen thought that he had not released his true strength. However, he did not know that Su Zimo had not used his full strength as well. If Su Zimo had taken on his demon form and released his blood qi, he would have been able to claim Monk Juchen's life with a single palm strike just now. To Su Zimo, although Monk Juchen was of the Buddhist monasteries, he was not a benevolent person either. There were thousands of corpses on Lu Wu's 9 tails alone, and there were even more cultivators who died in his hands in the ancient battlefield. That was the reason why Su Zimo said that there was a lot of blood on the hands of the master as well. Furthermore, there was no way Su Zimo could sit idly by when Monk Juchen wanted to kill Demoness Ji without any reason. Demoness Ji watched from the side the entire time and even forgot to help the burly man. On the one hand, she was stunned by the burly man's methods. On the other hand, there was a mystery in her heart that she had yet to unravel. Her gaze was cold as she looked at Su Zimo's face motionlessly, as though she wanted to make out something. End of chapter. Chapter 437. Since he was going to change his appearance and hide his identity, there was naturally no way Su Zimo would acknowledge Demoness Ji. After repelling Monk Juchen, he was about to leave. All of a sudden, a fragrance wafted over. A beautiful figure stood in front of him, blocking his path. A smiling face leaned over and looked at Su Zimo with unblinking eyes, seemingly deep in thought. Although Su Zimo looked calm on the surface, he felt a little guilty when he was stared at by Demoness Ji. He was always worried that he would give himself away and be seen through by Demoness Ji. Each time he faced this mischievous demoness, Su Zimo would feel a headache coming on. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Just as he was about to avoid Demoness Ji and walk to the side, his heart skipped a beat as he lamented to himself, if I leave just like that, she'll definitely suspect me and guess my identity. At that thought, Su Zimo's gaze shifted and he glared at Demoness Ji expressionlessly, asking coldly, what's the matter? Demoness Ji asked, who are you? Madblade. Su Zimo had long come up with a name. Do we know each other? Demoness Ji asked again. We don't know each other. Since we don't know each other, why did you save me? Save you? Su Zimo was slightly stunned. Immediately, a look of mockery flashed through his eyes as he sneered, Miss, you're thinking too much. I merely wanted to spar with that monk, and saving you was just a matter of convenience. You're lying. Demoness Ji's eyes flickered as she suddenly said. Su Zimo raised his brows slightly. Demoness Ji harumphed. When you first appeared, the first thing you did was to save me and protect me behind you. That was an extremely natural action without any hesitation. How dare you say that you don't know me? You blocked my line of sight and affected my attack. Naturally, I had to drag you to the side. Su Zimo sneered once more. All right. Demoness Ji nodded and took a step forward, continuing aggressively. You're standing in front of me, exposing your back completely to me. I'm a member of the demon sect, but you don't have the slightest bit of defense against me. You trust me completely, and you still say that you don't know me? One had to admit that Demoness Ji was simply too smart. Su Zimo thought that he had changed his appearance and did not give himself away in the slightest. He did not expect that he would still leave behind such a flaw. Just as Demoness Ji had said, how could two strangers who had met by chance trust each other completely and expose their backs to the other without any reservations? Su Zimo was silent for a moment, then said indifferently, even if I expose my back to you, do you think you can hurt me? Although his words were arrogant, he did not answer Demoness Ji's question. She asked again, also I'm not wearing a veil right now. Anyone who sees my face for the first time will definitely not be as calm as you are. You must have seen me before. Demoness Ji had the right to say that. Fiend sects were different from fiend heirs. Within the fiend sects, every cultivation realm corresponded to a fiend heir. For example, the fiend heir of Malevolent Earth sect Shuiyang was the #1 foundation establishment cultivator of Malevolent Earth sect and was considered a foundation establishment fiend heir. There was another fiend heir in the Jin Dan realm. After Shuiyang entered the Jin Dan realm, he lost his fiend heir title. If he wanted to become a fiend heir again, he would have to challenge the fiend heirs of the Jin Dan realm. As for the fiend heirs of the Jin Dan realm, they could not refuse. The fight for the fiend heirs of the fiend sex was extremely cruel. Every single fiend heir that stood out had to step on countless corpses of their sect mates, and their hands were stained with the blood of countless sect mates. Fiend sects encouraged such competition. However, fiend sects were different. From qi condensation foundation establishment, Jin Dan and even higher cultivation realms, only a single disciple of the demon sect could obtain the legacy of the sect. Unless the current generation's demon sect died or lost their qualifications, the demon sect would not choose a new successor. The lust sect had extremely high requirements for their physical bodies. It would not be an exaggeration to say that they were 1 in a billion. Every generation of women was born with a natural charm. Every frown, every smile, every gesture was enough to topple the world. When they truly grew up, they would definitely be peerless beauties who would charm all living beings. Just now, in that battle, Demoness Ji was completely restrained by the successor of Diamond Monastery. If it were the successors of other sects, they would have to consider whether they could resist the temptation of the demon sect. Countless years ago, there was a generation of fiend sects that even bewitched the legacy disciple of the Diamond Monk, causing him to prostrate before her and willingly become a fiend, shocking the entire cultivation world. In that life, the Titanium Temple became the laughingstock of the cultivation world. Therefore, the enmity between the Vajra Temple and the Reincarnation sect had been going on for a long time. Ever since Su Zimo appeared and caught sight of Demoness Ji's face, he was way too calm without any ripples in his eyes. Demoness Ji could not help but be suspicious. Turning around, Su Zimo's gaze moved slowly across Demoness Ji's body. From her snow-white chest that was half covered, to her waist that could not be held in one arm, to her 2 long slender legs that were filled with bouncy strength. His naked gaze was unrestrained and there was a faint hint of lust in his eyes. Finally, Su Zimo's bold gaze landed on Demoness Ji's flawless face that was so beautiful that it was suffocating as he grinned. "You're an interesting woman. Are you hinting to me that you want to dual cultivate with me and become Dao companions?" Demoness Ji frowned slightly. She could not be more familiar with the burly man's gaze right now. That gaze was truly annoying to her as well. However, the change in the burly man's attitude towards her was way too fast and she found it a little strange. When Su Zimo saw that Demoness Ji was still suspicious, he grit his teeth secretly and burst into laughter. "Beauty, since you want to dual cultivate, there's no better time than now. The sky will be the blanket, and the earth will be the seat. You and I will have intercourse here, enjoying the pleasure of fish and water." As he spoke, Su Zimo stretched out his large hand and hugged Demoness Ji's slender waist. He closed his eyes and lowered his head, kissing her snow-white and slender neck. He had an intoxicated expression and seemed to have forgotten everything. She frowned and tapped her feet gently, retreating backwards to distance herself from Su Zimo as a look of disgust flashed through her eyes. The Leifeng sect and the Leifeng sect seemed to be similar, but they were completely different. The Ecstasy sect cultivated the Tao of carnal pleasures. Although the Ecstasy sect's Ecstasy sex, 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 Ecstasy sect. If her virginity was taken, it would be equivalent to crippling her cultivation. He would also be stripped of his title as Lei Feng and expelled from the sect. A generation of beauties had lost their cultivation, but their peerless beauty was still there. Without the protection of the Devil sect, their fates could be imagined. Most of them had become the slaves of other cultivators, living a life worse than death. Up till this point of Demoness Ji's cultivation, there were countless cultivators who fell at her feet. However, she had never had any physical contact with any man, except for one person. A green figure flashed through Demoness Ji's mind and she could not help but bite her red lips. Back then, the two of them were trapped in a stone coffin. The space was cramped and they were struck by the undercurrent of the river. In the darkness, that person took advantage of them. Initially, Demoness G thought that the burly man before her was that person. But now, when she saw the bold actions and words of the burly man, she shook her head internally and lamented, "Am I really overthinking things?" Chapter 438. When he saw Demoness G dodge, Suzimo heaved a sigh of relief and lamented internally. He had no choice in order to hide his identity. "Why? You're unwilling?" Suzimo's expression darkened. Since it was an act, he had to do it well. When she saw the displeasure on the burly man's face, Demoness G froze for a moment before smiling sweetly in a soul-stirring manner. "Benefactor, please calm down. I'm afraid there's a misunderstanding. I mistook you for someone else and thought that you were an old friend of mine. I'll apologize to you right now, Benefactor." With that, she bowed with an apologetic expression. Suzimo harumphed and did not say anything else. Demoness G's gaze shifted as she asked again, "Benefactor, don't you want to know about that old friend of mine?" "Not interested." Suzimo waved it off casually and sprinted into the distance at an extremely fast speed. His voice sounded from afar. "I'm only interested in the Human Emperor's palace. I want to head to the Human Emperor's palace as well. Why don't we travel together?" Demoness G shouted from behind. Naturally, Suzimo would not agree to it and pretended not to hear anything. They had just met and he was nearly exposed by Demoness G. If they were to travel together, she might truly see through his identity. "Suzimo!" At this moment, a shout suddenly came from behind without warning. Instinctively, Suzimo wanted to stop in his tracks and turn back. This was the most normal and natural reaction for a person. However, in a flash, Suzimo's thoughts changed and he continued sprinting forward without stopping, vanishing before Demoness G's eyes in the blink of an eye. When she saw that, she frowned slightly and murmured in deep thought, "Seems like they're truly not the same person." After leaving far away, Suzimo slowed down gradually and heaved a sigh of relief. That was close. Demoness G was the one who shouted earlier on. Her shout came suddenly. If not for Suzimo's quick reaction, he would have exposed himself and been caught red-handed. "This girl is really..." Suzimo mumbled softly. He shook his head and flew towards the center of the ancient battlefield, where the Human Emperor's palace was located. 10 days later, the Human Emperor's palace slowly descended. As it got closer and closer to the ground, the pressure it exuded became more and more terrifying. Within a radius of 1,000 miles around the ancient palace, all of the ancient creatures and mutated beasts had moved away, not daring to linger in this area. Even after the passage of time, the human sovereign's might was still vast and mighty. He could still suppress the 8 barren lands and cause all demons to fear him. So this is the Human Emperor Palace. It is indeed shocking. The pressure is too great. Even though I'm at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment, I don't dare to step forward. It's hard to imagine what kind of pressure one would have to endure while fighting within the range of the Human Emperor Palace. Look, is that a divine dragon carved on the stone pillar? It's so lifelike, as if it's about to come to life. The appearance of the Human Emperor's palace attracted the attention of cultivators from all over the primordial battlefield. Layer after layer densely packed, everyone looked up at the sea of lightning and the ancient palace within the dark cloud vortex with shocked gazes. Not everyone could be as rational as Tangyu to suppress the curiosity in their hearts and avoid getting embroiled in this bloody battle. "I'll give all of you 3 breaths' time to leave. Whoever remains here will die." Suddenly, a cold voice sounded from the periphery of the crowd with a sharpness that could sever everything. Many cultivators turned back. Behind everyone, a long-robed cultivator strode over with a sheathed sword casually sheathed by his waist. His slender fingers waved gently with a cold expression. "How can we leave this place in 3 breaths' time?" Many cultivators frowned. 1 breath's time. The long-robed cultivator was expressionless as he lowered his gaze and replied, "Who is that? What an arrogant tone." Someone could not help but scoff coldly. 2 breaths' time. The long-robed cultivator continued. A sharp-eyed cultivator caught sight of the sect badge on that person's waist and his expression changed as he exclaimed, "Sword Sect. That person must be the successor of Sword Sect, Hang Qiuyu." Instantly, The crowd stirred when they heard the word successor of sword sect. Right then, Hang Choyu's voice sounded once more. 3 breaths time. Unknowingly, Hang Choyu's slender fingers were already on the hilt of the sword by his waist as he looked at everyone coldly. You've already lost your final chance. Buzz. An incomparably dazzling white light appeared. Nobody could describe the speed and power of that slash. The startling sword was unleashed in a startling manner. Instantly, almost all the cultivators facing Hang Choyu could not open their eyes because of that bedazzling sword beam. The next moment, everyone felt a chill in their throats as a warm and sticky liquid with a fishy stench sprayed out from their throats. It was blood. Opposite Hang Choyu, dozens of cultivators were dead. Their throats were sliced by a single slash and they fell to the ground with grievances. Almost all those who dared to come near the human emperor's palace were 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators with capabilities. However, those dozens of cultivators died on the spot without even having the chance to summon their spirit weapons. The might of a single slash was terrifying. The cultivators at the back were horrified. They quickly patted their storage bags and took out protective talismans. They crushed them at once, summoned their flying swords, took out shields, heart-protecting mirrors, and other defensive spirit tools. Only then did they feel slightly relieved. Swash! By the time everyone was ready and looked ahead, Hang Choyu's figure had already disappeared. A cool breeze blew. Hang Choyu had already charged into the crowd with the startling sword. A sword beam flashed and blood flashed. Some cultivators were severed at the waist as blood gushed out along with countless disgusting innards. Protection talismans were like paper against Hang Choyu's sword. Clang! A cultivator placed his shield in front of him, blocking the startling sword. A crisp sound rang out. Joy had just appeared in that person's eyes when his expression froze the next moment. His gaze dimmed and his head tilted to the side. His life force was severed. A white mark appeared on that person's shield and it broke into 2 when it fell to the ground. A superior-grade defensive spirit weapon was destroyed by the startling sword just like that. It could not even withstand a single slash. Many cultivators were shocked and did not dare to linger any longer as they fled into the distance in a frenzy. That was the terror of sword cultivators. Although the sword reigned supreme in Tianhuang mainland, not all cultivators who could wield flying swords could be called sword cultivators. True sword cultivators never let their swords leave their hands, and their hands never left their swords. Unlike flying swords, the swords in the hands of sword cultivators had hilts. Sword cultivators were particular about sword techniques, sword force and sword intent. They cultivated the Tao of the sword and were one with the sword, one with the universe or even one with the heavens. In the cultivation world, be it the immortal, fiend or Buddhist sects, it was difficult to tell which sect or lineage was stronger. One could only find out after a true battle. However, there was a publicly acknowledged fact in the cultivation world. The killing power of sword cultivators was the strongest. Among the immortal, fiend and Buddhist sects, sword cultivators of Sword Sect of the 9 immortal sects were the most famous. Back then, the founder of Sword Sect was the #1 sword emperor of the ancient era. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.